And heads up play from Demarcation, I believe, not pulling out the Afan right now, knowing he can do it later on and play around Wild Boar of the Sea. But Wild Boar of the Sea has been played already in round 2, so actually that's not a consideration. Like you mentioned, the poison does come down onto that big chunky crow, sitting at 10 points. Hammond can...
Yeah, and Hammond's not going to do much here. He's going to hit the bleeding... the already bleeding defender, and that defender did work and move it to the other round. The 4 extra charges, the cupbearer is gonna feed this crow some poison bread. The crow is gonna fall down and die, withering, and Demarcation takes game 1 over Santu. 30, oh god, he's even playing the charges. Look at this, now it's just getting cheeky. How many points, he's just like, how many points do I actually have? 42, not even 30, 42 to 25.
So we go from a tie game to a 17-point disparity. Someone's gonna have to explain that one to me, but I think, you know, part of it is Demarcation did find a lot of the cards he was missing in the last game. I mentioned kind of the card draw wasn't really there in terms of finding Stefan, in terms of, well, he didn't find Stefan this game either, so maybe Stefan not wanting to be in the spotlight this series. But he did find things like bribery, for example, and overall had a bit of a longer round 3 as well. And the biggest difference was the defender.
And also it comes down to the bleed by Santu. The bleed was just so ineffective because of things like the Crow Mother, things like the Ramon and the soldiers. The bleed really didn't put Demarcation in a position where he had to spend any of his tools. You know, he had all of the pieces he needed for the final round in order to play Helga, to get value out of that, to remove problematic cards, to play the Damien, to defend the Damien. He had so many options left, and he had an extra card. And when you're in that situation with all those points and an extra card, it's not really surprising necessarily that that's how they fell out.
Yeah, both games, Demarcation was able to, one, get his card back in the round 2 bleed, able to, you know, go card over his opponent going into round 3. But 2, also do this while not spending kind of his big game plan, which is the Damien, the Stefan, the Hefty Helga, for example, keeping all of these cards for round 3 in both games. So really well done by Demarcation. Again, it may be a matchup thing as well, where Santu was immediately just not going to be in a strong position because of the matchup. Could be as well. But going into game 2, of course, repeat that this was a repeat of game 1. So that was still just game 1, even though we've seen 2 games already. And now we will move into game 2 of the series. Of course, Demarcation 1-0 up and cannot play this Nilfgaard list anymore.
Yeah, and actually for Demarcation, in playing the Nilfgaard list that you typically see played going second on Bluecoin, on going first, it opens up his options now. He still has his Draug list, and he still has his wildcard list, so he still has his syndicate list, and both of those lists actually really love a red coin. You know, they really love going second. So although they are, you know, quite flexible with going first, this gives him kind of options for decks to play them, you know, in a more optimal position compared to if he queued them first.
And a quick reminder, Santu is going to, you know, move to the blue coin position now for game 2, and Demarcation 1-0 up and on red coin for game 2. You know, I think he's definitely very happy to be in his current position. 2 more wins, and he wins the series. Of course, it is a best of 5 and moves on to the final against Nick. But it's not over yet. It's just started, actually. And Santu has a chance to still claw back into the game and still take it, of course.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to be seeing a Northern Realms mirror. So Northern Realms versus Northern Realms. Although 2 very, very different Northern Realms lists. We have the Draug list being run by Demarcation versus the mid-range Shoop 1 of list by Santu. How do these pair up, Panda?
Well, the key differences are, 1, there is no row punish for this kind of swarmy strategy from Demarcation's Draug list. That's a very important point here. And 2, the lists are different in the way that Santu's list has quite a few engines. Not so much in the bronze packages, but more with Anna Strenger, with things like Reynard, for example, and Demarcation does not. Most of his points come just from Swarm and the synergy between buffing up units and just his normal mid-range control options. So Demarcation's value with cards like Philippa, with cards like Falibor, are going to generally be, and cards like Visigold even, are going to get much more value in removing engines, whereas Santu does not get the same value. He can kill off units and you know, kill off some of the swarm synergy, but you're not really killing an engine, so you're not getting that much value from controlling your opponent's board.
Yeah, just having a quick look at the hand state here for round 1. Demarcation doesn't really have the tools at all that he needs to be aggressive in this round. He has a lot of kind of filler bronzes, shall we say, things like the Radovid Royal Guard, the Aedirnian Mauler, the Temple Guard. These aren't the cards that you want to necessarily see in terms of your strategy, although they're not necessarily bad cards to play in round one, because in this situation you can just play them and then you're not going to draw into them. But it means that Santu may have control of the length of the round, and that is something that would be really devastating for Demarcation when his list is so much more synergistic.
Exactly. I think both players have kind of two ways to win a round. One of them for Santu is obviously the Shoop, Redea, and just this really high end. I think mostly Shoop and Redea. And secondly, he has kind of the rest of his gold cards. He has engines like Reynard and like Anna Strenger in a long round. And his bronzes are more kind of filler. There's not that much synergy between them. Whereas Demarcation has a very good bronze core with things like Caravan, with things like Reinforcement, Queen Adalia, and also the Voimer, for example. And then he has kind of his golds to finish off in round 3, maybe with things like Philippa or Falibor.
Yeah, Reinforcements, though, not always a card that you need to hold on to. It's actually a relatively low-cost card, 6 provisions, and it's something that you can always use on something like, say, a Temple Guard or a Enchantress, which has Bonded, in order to just get some value and drag out the round. I can't imagine Santu's going to want to commit Redea unless he has Prince Ansei's in hand, because she is used to engineer a solution and make Ansei's just that bit stronger, shall we say. So typically not a card that you'll see played without its good friend, although sometimes if you don't draw into these things, for example, you may either play it on the back row and just look at your kind of options in the neutrals, and it has a little bit of flexibility, but I can't imagine he'd commit it this early.
Yeah, Ansei tends to be kind of the best target for that Redea combination, but also Anna Strenger and Reynard Odo, because there isn't really kind of that guaranteed removal like an Invocation, for example. It just removes it no matter what. It's more of a damage-based removal with Ansei, with Visagard. A shield is very important, and if you're able to shield an engine and let it, get the value from that engine for a few turns, even in a long round, it's very valuable as well. So going to be a bit situational, but like you said, normally Ansei with the Inspired and the dual shield synergy gets you a massive amount of points in the right board state.
Yeah, and we see the Highwayman not doing a whole lot of good in this matchup. It's nice against things like the Ancrate Longship because it deals more damage to that. Things like the Endrega Larva, but they're literally being played as a 4-point play, pinging a little bit of damage on the Enchantress.
And just a trade of bronzes in round 1, like it is in many matchups in Gwent. You kind of don't want to overcommit. You want to keep most of your provisions tightly packaged and ready to go for rounds 2 and 3 that usually matter a bit more. Again, depending on the matchup, depending on how important the last say is, but in this case where both decks are going to have quite a lot of similarities in their gold packages at least, you kind of want to try and have the edge in terms of provisions going to round 2 and 3. And Demarcation says, okay, well, my bronzes ran out, so I guess it's time to pass. He does just that, and Santu very happy. Exactly.
His bronzes ran out too. I think if there was a situation where Demarcation could have gotten ahead with Reinforcements, there is definitely a valid solution to playing it there, because it's not going to be as impactful in the future. However, given the current state of the board, I feel like that's one of these things where you just didn't have any options other than to pass. Pel are actually not super terrible though, especially if you're worried about things like a shield onto Anna. You can use the Pellar just to remove that, and it opens the Anna up for things like Ansei's. Whereas if you duel something with a shield, you hit it and do no damage, and then it hits you back, and you just get whacked, basically.
So looking at the screen, it seems like Redea is being played right away on the back there. Tactical advantage coming down, so a neutral option instead, kind of the RNG option, not going for the guaranteed NR solution. So I guess we were wrong with all our predictions. Santu instead just going for points in this round 2. And obviously, not only because he's under 7 cards now, he's down to 6 cards, but also when you're committing a Redea, it's a guarantee you're bleeding, right? Because you're not going to just throw out the Redea and then pass. That just makes no sense.
Yeah, but Demarcation's hand is kind of miserable if you look at the current state. He might have to have a play, right? This is one of the lines of plays that you can do, where you use things like Adalia and Reinforcements on Scytheman after you kind of make a board. Because he doesn't have any of the Temple Guards, and he doesn't have access to Temple Guards with things like Royal Decree, because that sometimes has to be the kind of play. He's missing all of his tools, basically, so he's going to have to use what he has to construct something that looks like a strategy. And I feel like Santu's going to sniff that out straight away.
And it almost seems like Santu can see Demarcation's hand. He has some kind of superpower, and he can see how bad it looks, because Drog is a deck similarly to maybe even like Full Test Commandos back in the day, where you have a certain amount of setup needed, and if all of a sudden your opponent passes when you don't have that set up in hand, you can get 2-0'd even if you're a card up, because you have a Void Mirror, but you don't have the Caravans. You have, you know, no real good options for Adalia and Reinforcements. So Santu, I mean, a fantastic read here. Maybe seeing this as a possibility for, you know, his to be a win condition. Goes hard in round 2, committing Redea and Bloody Baron back-to-back to huge goals here, knowing that in a short round he's favored because he has a much less synergetic deck and game plan, whereas Demarcation thrives in a long round with the Swarm strategy, with Draug, with Revenants, etc.
Yeah, fortunately for, well, I don't think there was a situation where you could have actually lost value there, but you get full value from Philippa because you had 2 very, very big targets. And now he has to decide whether he wants to spend this Ballista damage or not. It would put him ahead, but then there's tactical advantage on the board. So you can imagine Santu's probably going to play another card. And that extra 2 damage could mean the removal or survival of something like an Anna Strenga.
Yeah, and I think Santu is not looking to pass anytime soon. After having committed Redea and Bloody Baron, it would not be a great trade, trading it for a Ballista and a Philippa. So I think going to continue going through this. Of course, the moment he does not see a Caravan or a Queen Adalia come down early, which are normally the tools that a Drogless uses to guarantee they can defend the bleed round 2, I think he may start suspecting that the hand for Demarcation is pretty weak. So the more he pushes, the more he can maybe force Demarcation into making very awkward, low-value plays. And again, possibility of a 2-0, maybe not, but still will make it very awkward for Demarcation.
I think that Demarcation between the Adalia, the Reinforcements, and the Scytheman would manage to, save his life that way if it did get to that point, especially because it puts so many more points on Voimir. But this Reynard, you just have to answer, right? But the fact that it wasn't TA'd means that Anna is coming. But there's no way you can just start to leave this, especially with cards like Shoop as well, because if Shoop then boosts that, and then they have the second boost for the Anna, there's so many engines.
Yeah. And now it's looking a bit awkward for Santu. I mean, Demarcation was able to answer with a ton of removal. Like we mentioned, removal is going to be so much more effective for Demarcation because he's removing engines like the Reynard Odo, like the Anna possibly coming down. If, well, he doesn't have enough boosts on the board for Visigoth to be able to take it down just yet. And we may see the TA boost the Anna as well. But yeah, we see the value of the control golds being a bit better for Demarcation in this matchup than they are for Santu.
Yeah, he does have the options of boosts, and it could be the case that Visigoth comes down for Santu at just the right moment to remove boosts from Demarcation's hand in order to deny value. But then I guess he can reapply them all with the Voimir. I think at this point you maybe, like, your options are you Reinforcements a Trebuchet, which just feels terrible, or you Adalia a Scytheman, which kind of signals your strategy. But ideally, if the round is going to go long, you want to Adalia the Scytheman, or you Leader a Scytheman.
And this is Demarcation.
And then you can reinforce. Ooh, no, Visigoth. Interesting. Kills Xanar, doesn't it? I like it. Demarcation with the big brain plays.
Committing quite a lot and committing his leader as well, which is, in most cases almost considered like a card, basically. So it looks like Santu is down a card, but really he's shortening the round for round 3. He's trying to kind of, wreck the Draug synergy in a longer round a tiny bit. And still, he does have, he has a card down, but he has his leader still completely intact. So card kind of similar here, and there goes a pass. So I think the bleed, it looks unsuccessful for Santu, but I think this is what he wanted to do. He wanted to shorten round 3, and essentially they are on even cards, although Demarcation has the last say in round 3.
But if Demarcation can draw a Temple Guard, a Caravan Vanguard,
yeah,
which he just did. He has all the tools he needs to be a very happy chappy indeed, because you have the Temple Guard, you have the Adalia, you have the Reinforcements, you have the Voimir, and you have the Draug. You have all of the tools in the toolbox. I mean, yes, missing things like Falibor, like Baron, like Royal Decree, not ideal. Double Vanguard, though, that's still nice because it still synergizes.
I think it's just way too many points from Demarcation's side here. I mean, we mentioned that they're bronzes, sure, you have the Caravan Guard, but when you start stacking these Caravan Guards together, it's just so many points that I think that Santu will just not be able to deal with here. He does have, of course, his leader ability, but I'm not sure it'll be enough. I mean, you can't play Falibor here, get rid of one.
I really like this Vanguard opener, because typically if you have a Dahlia and one Vanguard, you play Adalia first. So this kind of suggests to Santu, oh, hey, I don't have Adalia. What you gonna do? And, opting for the Shoop to try and remove those. But there's so many more Vanguards in hand that, it might be a situation where Santu feels like, oh, I'm dealing with the reinforcements, but in reality, you're not at all.
And here, Demarcation playing a Dahlia after that first Caravan Vanguard, kind of hiding information, and maybe making Santu think, okay, doesn't have a Dahlia, would have played it first instead. So a bit of a mind game there, of course, information. Not exactly points, but still very, very important in how players sequence their plays. See the Visigoth come down very early. Santu knowing there might not be anything to deal with it right away, and he can kind of
setting up for Falibor. That's what it is. He wants to kill as many of these Caravan Vanguards as he possibly can to deny value from the Draug and to deny value from the Voimir. So by setting it up in this way, it maybe gives him the option, but well, I guess it will, because I'd imagine we'll see the reinforcements to play another Vanguard.
Yeah, I think Santu knowing still he has a bit of time before, you know, the full sequence goes off. He's expecting reinforcements as well. We see yet another Caravan Vanguard come down. So even though 2 were killed, 6 more take their place, and this is a swarm strategy without any row punishes to punish it. So it's looking very good for Demarcation. Has a lot of you know, points on the board right away. Falibor will be great, but I don't think it'll be enough. Of course, still two uprising charges and the Scytheman able to come out, as well as the Visigoth pings as well. But I think it's just not going to be enough.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where the bleed absolutely kind of backfired in some ways, simply because Demarcation didn't draw the cards that you wanted to bleed. The cards you want to bleed are things like Draug. I mean, yes, he had like Voimir, Adalia, reinforcements. Those are some of the options, but he had enough things that could kind of work together, and he spent his leader in such a way, that it managed to keep him in the round, gain him a card, and then he was able to execute that entire strategy here.
It's a big point gap, and the Kira obviously not answered at all, so that Vitality coming in for many turns in a row. Voimir comes down on the Revenants. Gonna be just enough to win it here, 40-37. So again, unanswered game plan from Demarcation. Again, the bleed in round 2 was, I think, good in theory. It was very similar to the game that we saw, you know, the Nilfgaard game in game 1. But in both cases, the player being bled, the player being, you know, kind of disrupted, was able to hold his entire game plan for round 3, with Nilfgaard having the Damien, the Hefty Helga, and the Stefan, for example. And here, Demarcation having the Uprising, the full package ready to go for round 3. So in theory, a good bleed from both players, but in practice, not achieving maybe as much as they wanted to achieve. And Demarcation takes that game with the Uprising list.
Yeah, I think you always do have to go for the bleed that Santu went for. Like, I don't feel like that was incorrect. I feel like the issue that he had was he just needed to get like one Caravan Vanguard out of his opponent. One, maybe like an Adalia, maybe like the reinforcements, just one of the pieces of that puzzle to try and make it a little bit more difficult. But half the pieces weren't even in Demarcation's hand, which allowed him to play things like the reactive cards, things like the Philippa to remove targets, things like the Anses to remove targets, things like the Visigoth to just remove the engines. So instead of bleeding, he kind of had all of his bleeding cards countered, which allowed Demarcation right at the end there to just cinch the win by 3 points.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, again, it's tricky to say because, again, some decks that are bleeding you, if they have a very good kind of engine-based bleed with like Waters of Brokilon in round 2 with Scoia'tael, it is tricky because you have to kind of commit a big chunk of your game plan to survive the bleed and not get 2-0'd. But in this case, the list that Santu was running was not able to really do too much in round 2. They didn't have like kind of an engine start to really threaten the points in round 2. And Demarcation was allowed to play just random cards, not having to commit his big game plan to survive the bleed. And still, like you said, he didn't have those cards in hand. So he was able to play the bad cards and then just had the very good luck of drawing into his entire game plan for round 3 and having every single card be exactly what he wanted it to be for that short round 3.
Yeah, and now Santu in a position where he has to run the Syndicate Gauntlet, beating Demarcation's wildcard list with Skellige, with Lockdown, with Uprising. And that Uprising matchup is not that fun for Santu if we get to see it, because of things like Philippa. Philippa can steal the Anna. Philippa can steal the Reynard. Graydon, there's loads of big, tall targets for him. And although he does have answers to the Passiflora, like there are answers for the scenario, that doesn't necessarily spell disaster because there's so many extra Slice Seductresses in the deck. There's one just in and of itself. There's Adriano, so you can still get those engines chugging for yourself. You've also got Soul. You know, there's other things that Santu is going to have to deal with. It's not just the case that Demarcation has to deal with Santu's cards. Santu really has to deal with Demarcation's cards in this list.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see if Demarcation's choice to bring Wildcard was the correct one. Again, when you look at the deck list for the players and the minority bring, a certain faction, you start thinking, is this a big brain, a high IQ play? Was it the correct choice to bring Syndicate? Or did these guys just, mess up in their prep and it was a bad choice? So Demarcation has to win. He's 2-0 up. He has the chance to win this series. He has to play Wildcard possibly 3 times. So it's a do or die moment, and we're going to find out if it was correct to bring Wildcard in this situation. But before we do that, quick reminder to the viewers at home, the GWENT website has a bit of an interesting little countdown here. I'm not sure what it could be. We saw a rocket launch yesterday, so it can't be that. Could be something different. Maybe some kind of Gwent rocket is being launched into the stratosphere. I'll have to, get some confirmation from Berja about that one. I think it may not be the case, though. Maybe something else. Time for you guys at home to speculate what this could mean, what could be unveiled in 2 days' time. I'm excited.
Maybe not a rocket, but I'm sure it's going to be rocking whatever it is that we do find out in a couple of days. There are also a few juicy leaks still to come here in the broadcast, so do stay tuned for those. I know in Twitch chat, at least you have the leak emoji, so get your leaks ready. Build up some hype because they are coming. There's going to be a few after this set, actually. Look at that. I'm leaking things already. So after the set, we'll have some surprises for you. Look at that. But we are just waiting to see what it is Santu decides to pick. We do know that Demarcation will be playing Wildcard, and Demarcation will be going first in this Game 3. Current scoreline 2-0 in favor of Demarcation. He has seemed pretty unstoppable so far this semifinal.
Yeah, we're good to go. The game has started. Demarcation is on the correct coin. We see blue coin right away. And of course, he is playing the correct deck, the only one he has available, Wildcard, hoping to get a wild win here and close out this series against Santu. A very strong player, but Demarcation off to a very good start, even without the blazing sun kind of glorifying his presence on the webcam. Still doing it, doing the job here, going 2-0 up and having, just one more win to go to close out this series.
Now, Panda, he's hoping to go wild hard and win the series. Come on. Yeah, I'm going to have to train you with these puns. You're going to be an expert in no time.
I don't know if I want that training. I think I'm going to politely decline the training, Jaggers.
Oh, well, first you have to pay in advance, obviously.
We do see Tiger's Eye is the stratagem, of course, for Syndicate. Gets you 4 coins, so a bit of an unusual one. We're used to seeing normally Magic Lamp or Tactical Advantage. Instead, we see the coin-based stratagem here, and the Longship, very, expected play from Skellige on turn 1. Smacks that Sea Jackal as soon as it comes down.
Yeah, and opting to utilize the Tiger's Eye there to get max coins, thin out the Flying Redanian from the deck, and boost the Sea Jackal a little bit at the same time. He played the Tiger's Eye. He did his time. He took his chances, and he's hoping that Sea Jackal will survive.
And the hand for Demarcation, not looking great for one reason. You don't have Philippa. And Philippa is the answer to Crow Mother usually, which is usually played on round 1. And obviously if you steal it on round 1, you're denying the carryover on rounds 2 and 3. But Crow Mother also not in hand for Santu. So forget everything I said and don't worry about that interaction for now.
Yeah, this is the thing. You don't have to answer. You don't have to worry about answering a card if your opponent doesn't have it. And that is one of these situations. So Soul, it's so good here on this side of the board. Demarcation with Soul at Horde 9 does mean that boy is going to be a boosty boy. Well, he was until he got attacked by a Scorpion. It would have boosted 3 points per turn. And that was almost like a Giga Scorpion decoction check, shall we say, by Demarcation.
Yeah, that was a snap play. I mean, if you're Santu, you don't even have to think about it. There's no universe there's no chance, no parallel universe where you don't just deny that engine right away, because it is one of the scariest engines in the game. Of course, it has a big drawback. It does go really big, so if you have a reset or a poison, it's instantly denied. But the decoction comes in early, right when it's at 6 before it grows anymore, and says, you're out of here.
Yeah, he's benched. Good.
Well, he's more than benched. He's in the graveyard. I think that's a little, past the benching stage, more of the, graveyard.
he's gone a little bit past the bench.
Underground stage.
It's not looking so well. So what does Demarcation do here? You have to kind of decide what you want to play for the round. You're on 7 cards. Your opponent hasn't really developed their graveyard other than a long ship. You have 7 points on your opponent. You know, what do you do? And opting to just pop down another spender, I guess it feels like he has too many, and play this round just a little bit longer.
And usually you're kind of scared of getting units to go this tall with like Sea Jackal, for example. But right now in Demarcation's position, he's on blue coin. His real like nice engine has been denied. So all of a sudden he's playing just for trying to get a pass, I believe. I mean, especially with Wildcard, it's not a deck where you can really out-tempo your opponent if your key engines are removed like the Sol was. So yeah, I mean, gets a pass right away as soon as he can. And at that point, the Sea Jackal isn't really that big of a threat because he's not going to use Morkvarg round 1 to deal with it.
No, at this point, the Redanian fleet, the Skellige fleet, too much. Santu popping a druid into the graveyard there for Ermion to go fishing for later on, potentially. And being able to establish a nice amount of graveyard, although the only thing missing really is the Ermion and the Crow Mother. I feel like Demarcation didn't really spend too much. He spent Soul, and yes, that has the potential to be really big. However, considering there's cards like Giga Scorpion Decoction, there's cards like Morkvarg, Wild Heart of the Sea, there are a lot of answers to it, so you may as well kind of play it as a check, shall we say, to your opponent. Do you have these cards? If you do, then I'm okay with losing round 1, and if you don't, then life's a good one.
Passiflora is found. This is the one deck in this series, the wildcard deck, that Bomb Heavers matter. Every other deck, they are irrelevant, so Bomb Heaver matters in Santu's list. Santu, of course, does not have it in hand at the moment because that's just how things go, right? When you need it, you don't have it. When you don't need it, you have it. So,
and he did have the Royal Decree, though, so he did have access to it. But the thing is, he also needs to establish his own graveyard. And if Demarcation does play Passiflora this round, Santu's not that unhappy because he doesn't have to play that much into this round, you know. Although I would imagine we'll see Santu play another card. We'll see him play the Crow Mother to set that up. He doesn't really care if Demarcation plays Passiflora this round, but he does care if Demarcation plays Passiflora next round if he doesn't find that Bomb Heaver.
Exactly. And in the situation right now, even if Passiflora is played, it's probably not enough tempo to beat out this Ermion plus Crow Mother 2-turn play. And at that point, Santu will, I think, snap pass, keep his card, and possibly go into a longer round 3 where he depends more on the Wild Boar value over just a very short getting it value. Wildcard generally not a deck that has a ton of you know, scary long run engines, but with Passiflora and Adriana, with this kind of version, it does get a lot scarier in the long round.
So Hammond's gonna move that ship to the back row and kind of deny some of the bleed options from Santu. And we've seen Demarcation do this over and over again because we have seen this Skellige list now 3 times, once a draw, once a loss, and now trying to find the win here. And Demarcation does a very good job of stopping the boats contributing to the bleed.
Yeah.
And that makes it much easier for him to gain a card, which I think can be really, really impactful.
Yeah, and also the Hammond is a play that usually when you're being bled, you can maybe at the beginning just commit a few bronzes, see what your opponent's going to do, and kind of react to what he's doing, and then start playing more, overcommitting a bit more with your gold. But in this case, I think he had a pretty good read that we could see an Ermion into Crow Mother, and wants to keep the gap not too large, wants to play a Hammond for a decent amount of points, you know, an 8-point play to start it off, and then still have some kind of reach with something like a you know, Adriano, now over-tempoing and now already guaranteeing he can keep the card as long as he can keep ahead.
Yeah, that is, though, one of the Blind Eyes, and you do need Blind Eyes units to trigger the Passiflora, so we've also got the Street Urchin in hand, so another Blind Eye, so you have that option. And I believe the Kalkstein, yeah, is a Blind Eye, so a couple options to trigger the Passiflora still, and that did, you know, like you said, provide enough tempo to get ahead.
And now Demarcation has to decide, does he want to spend the scenario and then not commit too much more, and then have that scenario kind of get most of his tempo here, and Santu will decide to, you know, he guarantees going a card down, it's fine, and just plays bronzes instead? Or does he try and defend here without playing the scenario and, you know, keeps that scenario for round 3? Until now, in all of these bleeds that we've been seeing in this series, the player being bled has been able to defend without committing too much. We'll see if Demarcation is able to do the same in this situation here.
Yeah, this is definitely a little bit of a tricky one, especially with a big lack of spenders in hand. At this point, you know, you've got lots of ways to generate coins, but you don't really have lots of ways to spend coins. There's no good poison target. Okay, well now there is. There was no good poison target on board, so you didn't really want to spend the fist tech. We see Hammond being used to turn off MK, disable her ability. She's not into that, and move her to the front row. But you know, still got 2 coins out of it. And at this point, when you have no spenders, you don't necessarily really need the coins in this round. Hammond also does provide a pretty nice poison target. It allows Demarcation, if he wants to play a Fist Tech Trafficker and stay in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, he has the reach to do that and still threaten the second poison coming in if Santu decides to not react to that and not play the Gremist, for example. Gremist, of course, a key card in this matchup, can deal with not only poisons but also bounties coming down. We see Graydon in hand for Demarcation, so has to be very careful with that. And Gremist may be a bit more valuable than it usually is in most matchups.
Yeah, Graydon's a nice little card, but like you said, you do need the bounty. You do have wildcard though to access it, so you can set it up in 1 turn. So it's one of these cards where this is where wildcard does well. You have options like the Graydon, you have options like the Fist Tech Traffickers where you can do poison stuff in 1 turn as well. Though Demarcation now opting to snap the Passiflora, and I feel like as Santu, you're probably pretty happy to see that, given that you don't have Bomb Heaver, and you wouldn't want to see it in round 3 if you don't draw it.
Exactly.
But on the flip side, you're going down a card on a bleed with Skellige for the 3rd time.
I think that was pretty expected, though. I mean, I think most of the bleed Santu is doing, it's not like he's unaware that he's going to lose a card. It's not like he's surprised every time. Oh, no, I lost a card. What happened here? I think he was expecting it, but he wanted to at least make it worthwhile and get that Passiflora out. Although in this case, again, Passiflora, when your opponent doesn't have an answer, it's obviously a huge, maybe an overcommitment to play it in this case. But because Demarcation knows that there is a Bomb Heaver in Santu's list, he says, okay, I can just play it here. It's not worth that much in this current matchup. And Bomb Heaver arrives a bit late to the party and gets thrown out right away. Nothing to do with me.
His outfit. He doesn't meet the dress code for the Passiflora party, unfortunately, so he's going in the bin. Not maybe in the graveyard, but in the bin. In terms of that play, actually, though, it did work out perfectly because we saw Santu draw into the Bomb Heaver. As a result of that, it means that playing Passiflora into that round is correct because you don't need it in round 3. But this is one of these things where it's like, oh, is my opponent going to have an answer? Do they have a counter? You know, do I use it to commit to this round or do I try and save it? And there's some times where, in hindsight, it would be better to save, but you know, these players don't have complete information, so it's one of these things where you have to just make a judgment call. And sometimes you just got to believe that your opponent doesn't have cards.
Exactly. Looking at this hand now for Demarcation, though, he did draw the Philippa a bit late to the party, but does arrive finally, and this is one of kind of the superstar cards in terms of value and just a massive amount of swing points, using your coins very efficiently. And obviously a great card to draw. Not missing really too many cards, does miss a defender, but usually a defender can be taken care of with the long ships, for example, and there are a few damage pings in Skellige. But missing it here, does play the Street Urchins, does play the Spender, a bit of profit there as well, goes up to 6 coins. And looking at
and keeping that profit.
Yeah, Santu's deck not missing any gold cards either.
No, and keeping that profit because you want to try and get to 9 coins kind of early in order to play Wild Brother. See, it also gives you options to kidnap a boat, basically. Just like put the boat in the back of your van and take it over to the Novigrad, more or less. And I think that's what you're doing here is you want to sit a little bit on it in order to find the right target. And because of all the resurrects, that is an option.
And there's a Gremist coming down, of course. Gremist is a card that does refresh every time an alchemy card is played, so you can get a lot of value in it, especially against wildcard that has poisons and has the bounties as well. So maybe the first of many purifies coming from Gremist. We'll see if there's maybe a Philippa answer to deny that, possibly. There aren't many better targets for Philippa in this matchup either.
I mean, I think ultimately, though, you can opt to poison the Gremist, right? If you poison the Gremist, he can't purify himself, and that's decent value for these poisons, which I think we'll see here. And then you can always just use the Philippa as a value play. We're also going to see, you know, more 5s coming down. So although Gremist is a nice Graydon target, Graydon is the card that Demarcation wants to last play. He has last say, and you don't want to play into something like a Morkvarg. So I'd imagine you'll see that come down very, you know, right at the end.
Yep, and we see the double fist deck in hand. Of course, he is at 9 coins, but he isn't kind of going over that because the fist deck only gives you coins if you poison your own ally. If not, it's just a normal kind of Fangs of the Empire or King Cobra play, basically.
Yeah, it's basically like medical testing, right? You know, you get paid and then you take some sort of treatment that may or may not kill you. That's what happens with the self poison anyway. And just Demarcation at this point can kind of afford to bide his time. He's not really worried about removal anymore because he's seen it all. So he's quite happy to play good old Ewald, who's just crawled out of the sewers, and he's just chilling on the streets of Novigrad.
Talking about the Street Urchin as well, very important card to have because it allows you, again, to control your coins and never kind of go over that 9-coin value and you kind of waste coins, basically. And because it is kind of a 1-coin trigger, it's very easy to kind of manipulate that total and make sure you're getting the full value out of your bank. So a great card to have on the board and to have it stick as well, being the first card played in this round. Getty does come down now and get ready for the fireworks. It's going to be a very, very long animation here. Irmion comes down, and there was, of course, a druid in the graveyard from round 1. We talked about it with the herbalist.
This is where you start clicking like mad. The rope's getting shorter and shorter. The Crow Mama comes out. Freya's Blessing comes out.
And there's a herbalist.
Oh my god, herbalist. Heal someone.
So this is what I mean as a spectator. It looks like...
hit too? Oh, that's not what you want to see at all. Or is it? I mean, it killed the Spender.
It did a pretty good job there against AOL. I think that was an okay choice. I think that was not a rope. I think that was a decision made by Santu. And again, we talked about the huge point swing, 35 points now in Santu's favor to a very measly and pathetic 10 on Demarcation's side. But he still has his big flashy firework play in Philippa and Graydon, for example, still in hand. So, and again, this board state isn't looking great for Wild Boar. You have 10 points on the board, but you also don't have many units, so that makes the Wild Boar of the Sea that much worse.
Does Demarcation really need the Spender, though? With Philippa, that is basically his Spender at this point. He doesn't have that many more ways to profit, right? The Fist Tech is going to be used offensively. The Graydon doesn't profit. He has a Tribute. The Adelbert, yes, he does profit, so that's maybe 2, but you can always use that to remove, say, a bleeding from the Savage Bear, so that gets points there. And then the Bounty, I mean, that gives you 3 profit, but you only need 5 to Tribute Graydon, so that leaves you with a bunch of money for Philippa. So although the Ewald, removal may have been Santu's intention, I don't think it affects Demarcation too much. It is a very big point, that gap, though, 16 points between the two.
Of course, Santu does not know Demarcation's hand. He doesn't know if he has a Philippa or not. He doesn't know if he has any more Spenders, for example. So there is, obviously a chance that was obviously the correct play. Street Urchins is a Spender that plays into Morkvark, but because Demarcation has last say, he can just about boost that up at the very end of the match. So not something that really matters in this case. Demarcation knows this, obviously, and is not going to obviously boost that right now, knowing that Morkvark can still be played. 2 kind of ideal finishers for Santu still in hand, but maybe not finding the value they'd normally find in most matchups in this current matchup with a very small amount of cards on the board for Demarcation and no real huge unit for Morkvark to tackle down.
Yeah, you did say like there is another Spender on the board, so I do think that maybe in that situation Santu is actually a victim of the rope, because you do get so many points from the Mardrome as the boost. It does 3 damage, but then boosts by 9, so ultimately is a 6-point play compared to removing Ewald, which is never going to be that good given the current board state.
We talked about the point disparity, but Philippa comes down. All of a sudden, the game is pretty much tied. There's a bounty on the board for Santu as well. The Gremist is gone. The double poisons, of course, eliminating it. And also, not any alchemy cards after Getty being played to refresh its ability anyway. So the bounty cannot be removed. And now we'll see if Santu, with the help of Wild Boar of the Sea and Morkvark, can get enough points here.
I think it's going to be very close. I mean, we will see the Tribute and the boost. We've got the Urchin is just alive, though. I think if Santu was able to destroy the Urchin, then these things would be very, very different. However, now that Morkvark has been played, that opens the door for Graydon to trigger the bounty, and then you have the options. You can pay the Tribute because you're going to gain the 4 coins back. You can protect the Street Urchin, and then you still have your Spender. And even then, I feel like it's coming down to chump change, really.
And unfortunately, Kalkstein, not a great card to finish the game with here for Demarcation. Not going to do really much of anything. You could save the bleed, but again, you're paying 2 coins to do so. So better just to spend those coins on the Street Urchin instead. And Wild Boar of the Sea is still Wild Boar of the Sea. A ton of points come down. And Demarcation with just the Cog Stain on the board and just these coins, I think it's close, but it's just not going to be enough here. The bleed comes in as well, and 4 points down there. So Santu, he stays in this. Wild War of the Sea and Morkvark still proved to be enough to take it down there. And of course, the board state for Demarcation did grow in those last few turns. You had to play units on the board finally, and Wild Boar still got a ton of value, one of the best gold cards in the game at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose if you do play the boost, you're playing into a bounty. You know, you're giving your opponent a bigger target to remove. So the Ewald thing is a very interesting kind of argument, and I think that's one of these things where you would go back and you would look and you would be like, you know, how much value does this give me versus this? Do they have the answers for this? And that's one of these things where it could have been a make or break decision depending on the game and depending on the matchup. But really well played by Santu there. And we're going into game number 4. So that is 1 loss for Wildcard, but will it see 2 more?
Yeah, wildcard, strike number 1, strike number 3, and you're out. We'll see if we get there. Santu starting to mount the comeback, does get that finally that first win with Second Wind. Mystic Echo was banned, so now he is left with Lockdown and Uprising to take on Wildcard from Demarcation. I mentioned it, you know, earlier on in this series. Wildcard is kind of the minority faction or syndicate rather to bring to this tournament. Not many players brought it, only Tailbot and Demarcation did. Tailbot, of course, eliminated yesterday. Was it the correct choice?
Wildcard's an interesting one, though, because against Lockdown, for example, it does break your whole bounty thing, but you still have ways of, you know, triggering those things. Like, yes, you have the option of poisoning twice in 1 turn. Yes, you have the option of playing a bounty and then playing, say, Graydon, or playing a bounty and then killing it with our good friend Ewald, who's just escaped from the sewers. But you don't necessarily need it. And that's one of these things about that leader is Lockdown thrives on denying leaders that are very, very important to your strategy. You know, things like Second Wind, for example, that absolutely kind of gets shut down because you can no longer trigger your Gedenith all in 1 turn. Whereas with Wildcard, I don't think it's maybe as impacted as some of the other decks that we've seen.
It's very possible that Demarcation in his lineup when he prepared it for this tournament, we've seen online tournaments in the past, you know, month, past few weeks, having a pretty high amount of lockdown decks being brought from Nilfgaard. I think a lot of the you know, top tier players were bringing lockdown to the tournaments, to the qualifiers, even for GWENT Open number 2, for example. And his lineup really isn't, you know, if there's a lockdown deck, it's not a big deal. Whereas we saw Nick, for example, with mobilization, it is kind of a big deal. Second Wind also really gets punished by that as well, like you mentioned. So yeah, I think that's
Uprising as well.
One of the big reasons why he just decided to ban Mystic Echo and let the lockdown go through. Not a big deal. It has, again, we mentioned the last rate row punish, but he already got the win with his draw deck, so he's not even worried about kind of row punishes anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this does turn out. And bear in mind that Demarcation is known for playing Draug, and he's known for playing Wildcard. These are Demarcation's kind of comfort decks. They're strong decks, but he's also very, very good at them. So having 3 opportunities to try and win with this deck as Demarcation, I think is going to be, you know, it's going to be quite challenging for Santu to, you know, manage to get this reverse sweep.
Yeah, it's similar to Wang ID and Sumo bringing Bloodsun. I think especially Wang ID, he's kind of very known for excelling on the Vampires list, that when most players normally aren't playing Vampires or not even considering it for their ladder games, for example. In this case, yeah, similar for Demarcation. Of course, we see Santu now on blue coin, has switched again for game 4, and playing his Uprising NR.
A lot of bronze.
Well, it's sometimes a good thing for round 1, right? You don't want to play your gold, so we'll see if it ends up mattering too much. But it is tricky for Santu, of course. You kind of have to defend yourself with blue coin, and when you have kind of this kind of weak bronze package, which is obviously there's not much synergy because you have a singleton deck with Shoop and Radea, it becomes sometimes a bit trickier.
Yeah, still, I mean, I get what you're saying. You do want to have some bronze cards to play in round 1 and kind of maybe just get rid of them if that's your option. But 6 bronze cards, I mean, I'm maybe not so sure. With that said, if we have a little look at Demarcation's hand, it's not looking particularly hot either.
Yeah, again, a lot of bronzes. Double Slander, maybe not the best thing to see right now in hand. Of course, you want that kind of for round 3 with the grading combo. And again, there aren't that many big units. I guess Raynar Odo is a pretty good target for it. Maybe Baron or Falibor as well.
Yeah, and no Philippa either. So you don't really have the tools for this matchup that you need. Um, this matchup, I do think, Demarcation has a lot of answers to a lot of Santu's cards, but given the current state of the hands, I think both players like looking for things and really missing some of the key cards for their strategies. So it's going to be interesting to see how this round one goes.
Important to note, though, there is a Bomb Heaver and Scenario, not in hand, but could be targeted, could be countered in round 2, possibly, if Demarcation does end up playing it there. Philippa, we talked about it briefly, but it's going to be a clutch card in this matchup. So many good targets, Reynard, Anna Strenger as well, Visigold even, Baron. I mean, a lot of different targets for Philippa to take.
Yeah, so I think at this point, what Demarcation is maybe considering is he wants to definitely kill the poison, but what he can do is utilize the bounty before he plays the second poison. But at the moment, there's such a big tempo gap, and you kind of need a spender on the board if you're going to go down that route. In which case, you would want to play. Oh, there's the Slander, yeah. That you would want to play the Sea Jackal before you do that in order to have a way of modulating your coins.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to go to 9 coins, get out the Redanian, flies out, obviously, on turn end when you have 9 coins, the Horde here indicating your bank status, basically, and summons the unit to from your deck or graveyard to the row, and then kind of the Crow Mother continues to pop up throughout the rest of the game when you reach that Horde 9. The pass here, again, there's a big gap, and Demarcation can't do it possibly in 1 coin, but it's fine because he can now just commit multiple cards. It looks like he's going into some kind of huge card disadvantage black hole, but instead just going to dry pass round 2 and commit to a long round 3 possibly.
Yeah, going 2 cards down in round 1, it can be okay as long as you can still kind of get your cards back going into the 3rd round, or even going a card down sometimes, that there is options. It kind of depends how Demarcation draws here as to what he wants to play. Soul is kind of a risk because of Baron, but you do have the Ajar as an option to defend it. And we talked about missing gold cards. Demarcation not really missing gold cards anymore.
Exactly. And round 1, the big thing is not going under 4 cards. If you're above 4 cards, when you pass, you draw 3, and then you draw 3 again, so you're back at 10, and the card disadvantage gets forgotten. And we saw it here exactly. The dry pass comes down immediately. Obviously, he cannot try and bleed here because he's already a card down, or 2 cards down going into it, so once he goes under 7, he'd be in a bit of a pickle. Instead, the dry pass comes down, and with the Passiflora being drawn, he has a pretty good chance going into a long round. Of course, Bomb Heaver will answer, but there'll be 4 points on each of the players' boards, but an engine for Demarcation, so still a bit, above on the tempo.
Oh, and you can see Santu just looking and looking for gold cards. Look at them all, bronze card in and out and in and out, and it's just getting replaced over and over again by yet another bronze card. And you got to feel a little bit for Santu with that mulligan, missing the Shoop, missing Anses, missing Falibor, missing Kira. And it's like, yes, he does have Royal Decree, so he can get one of them, but he's not getting the Shoop. He does have the Bomb Heaver in order to deal with the Passiflora, but he may have to get through Ajar in order to be able to utilize that. We have a Range Row, Redea.
Redea comes down right away, like we saw in the previous game as well, 2 games ago as well. We saw Sly Seductress being mulligan from Demarcation. Of course, he did not have a spender, really, kind of a Sea Jackal or a Street Urchin in hand, found the Sea Jackal, so I think it's what he wanted to find. In terms of what he's missing, Ewald and Adriano, pretty big cards to be missing here. Pretty good value in the long run, especially Adriano.
Yeah, but you do have the Vivaldi Bank, remember, so you can go looking.
That is true, but you might look, but you might not find. Depends on kind of the order of the cards and if you have enough coins as well.
Yeah, and I really think at this point, Santu, with the Range Rover Redea, was looking for some damage, and unfortunately, no AAT moment where you get what you want, because he did have, Magic Lamp and Tactical Advantage and stuff. So it's going to be a little bit trickier for him to remove some of the engines that Demarcation is capable of generating.
And Royal Decree in hand for Santu, but he is missing not just 1 key gold, but a few more than that. Looks like, yeah, the Royal Decree does come down immediately, finds the Falibor, but loses out on Shoop, loses out on the Anses, and loses out on the Kira. So 3 big golds. We talk about NR in this very kind of inconsistent list with a ton of just bad bronzes and a few very good golds. When you miss those very good golds, you may just lose the game because of it. So We'll see if that ends up happening here, of course. Has great removal options in the Oil and the Thunder, but then he has a less great Enchantress for a very long round 3. Not too great.
Yeah. And as I did say, this list is a little bit sad because it's generating these great big value units. So Redea, Falibor, and that means that in one turn, Demarcation can opt to play the wild card, choose Slander, and place a bounty on a unit. And for those of you guys who are maybe a bit newer to the game, when there's a bounty on a unit, if it dies, the Syndicate player will gain coins equal to that card's base value. So if you can put a bounty on Redea and kill her, you're getting 8 coins. And 8 coins are more or less equal to points, right? So you're doing 8 points of damage and you're gaining 8 points of profit. So that's about a 16-point play, plus whatever Graydon gives.
He heads up play, shield on the MK, of course. Demarcation knows exactly what is in the deck. Maybe not in the hand, but definitely in the deck for Santu. Of course, the Thunder and the Oil could have both answered the MK very cleanly, trading a bronze for a gold. But the shield comes down and keeps it very well protected. And yeah, that was, again, a snap decision there. Passiflora into Bomb Heaver, but 5-point Slide Seductress versus 5-point Bomb Heaver. The Slide Seductress ends up winning out.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if you ever have the consideration to also play the shield on the Seductress. I think at the moment you probably don't want to do that. You know, you have, there's a lot of ways to kind of kill it with Visagard to remove the shield, with Boiling Oil, with Alzur's Thunder. You know, the Seductress could end up getting all oily, in which case you might just want to leave her. But this is where the coins come into value, and this is where Philippa is huge, because you can pinch that Reynard. And Reynard boosts a unit whenever you play a unit, right? So including Philippa, she kidnapped him and in getting played got boosted. And how does Santu answer this Reynard?
It's
his
difficult.
Own Reynard.
Exactly. I mean, you have to maybe Visagard if you have enough boosted units, but you don't have them right now. You have to set that up a few more turns in advance. And Reynard does not really care for color. I mean, the factions, it's irrelevant. He's going to boost the units no matter what. It's not a specific tribal tag either. So one of the best targets for sure for Felipe to steal here. A 6-point body, pretty decent, but also the engine value from him in what is still a pretty long round 3.
And Anna Stringer comes down on the board, but this might just be the case where you go for the wildcard play now with the Graydon in order to just straight kill that. Like, yes, you lose out on the tribute and the boost, but you don't really want to be boosting Graydon at this stage in the game because it just gives bloody Baron value, right? It's totally a waste of money. Financial advisor Jaggeris says don't do that, it's a waste of money. But then maybe opting for the Hammond to move it instead. At the moment, you know, it adds the bleeding, which means it won't boost on either side, but it will still boost to the right.
So Visagard deciding that the MK is more dangerous than the Reynard in this situation, and decides to kill that instead of Reynard. Like you mentioned, 2 coins per turn is generally better than 1 point per turn, because coins are essentially 1 point in most cases, as long as you have those spenders and you don't overflow your bank, basically. So probably the better choice there. But MK, thanks to that shield, sticking onto the board for so long, getting a great amount of value in the coin generation, and also kind of forcing the Visagard to take it down instead of the Reynard.
Yeah, and the other thing that it's worth being aware of in terms of the MK is that if you can get to 9 coins, then you also get the Flying Redanian. The Flying Redanian will come flying out of the graveyard, because if you can get to 9 coins at the end of the turn, then it triggers the Horde effect. So it's not even just 2 coins or 2 points. You've also got the extra points of the Flying Redanian to factor in.
And this is a massive point swing, of course. We did see the full Uprising charges being used and the Siphon coming down onto a very, very boosted board, as well as Anna still unstoppable. Reynard was stolen, but Anna could not be stolen. There is no real answer yet to this card, and it's getting out of control. We saw it yesterday as well in some of the quarterfinal matches where Anna, uncontested, just spirals out of control and wins the game for the NR player.
Yeah, and we see the Vivaldi Bank being played here by Demarcation. We're going to see exactly what those options are, what it is he goes for. And it's our good friend, Ewald. He's come out of the sewers. 15 years he's been in there, and now Anna, I don't think she's looking so strong after all. Although maybe just opting for the 1 ping and saving the coins.
Yeah, we'll boost the unit to the right, but not both units, because there is not an inspired point value on it anymore, because it is kind of
oh my God.
That was, yeah, a snap. All-Stars Thunder destroys Ewald. As soon as he comes in, he was happy. He was,
he should have stayed in the sewers at this point, I think.
He was here to help, and all of a sudden, Zeus comes in from above and just zaps him out of existence.
I mean, that was violent. That was violent. These coins in bank, though, I really do feel like Demarcation, it would quite like to hit the 9, and getting to the 8 is just, that's so bittersweet in terms of the 3 extra points, because those 3 extra points could be really impactful. The Bloody Baron, there's too many reset targets, right? You want to reset the Graydon, you want to reset the Seductress, you want to reset the Soul, and the Boiling Oil, it's not really accounting to that much. So although there is currently a 12-point gap, and there is Anna Strenga, 1 engine, in return to that, there is the Sly Seductress, so there's an engine and the Soul on the side of Demarcation, and Graydon plus Sea Jackal, that's a lot of points.
Yeah, right now, for a viewer that maybe has not played Syndicate too much, you may think, okay, Santu's very, very far ahead, 18 points, there's only 2 cards left, what can go wrong here for him? Well, a lot can go wrong when you have, like you mentioned, Radea, an 8-point body. You have the Graydon and Slander combo as well. Sea Jackal is a spender to make sure you can profit from all those coins in your bank and not leave not even a single one of those coins unspent, basically. It's going to be, I think, a lot closer than it looks, that's for sure. Sea Jackal does come down. Going to get a bit of buff there and a bit of a coin expenditure as well. Of course, Baron already has a better target in Saul anyway, so it doesn't matter if you boost the Sea Jackal now. And now we'll see, is it enough? Graydon and the Slander combo with leader ability. You have everything you need to not overspend.
Like a lot of coins. Bear in mind, you're going to get 8 from the Slander. You've got the points from the Slander itself, because Slander gives you 3. Plus the bounty, you've got the boost potentially. Plus you have the clicks on the Sea Jackal. So let's see, 51 to 65. Is this going to be Demarcation's set? Yes, it is Demarcation with a 25-point Sea Jackal. He's leaving his mark on Gwent Open #1, defeating Team Aretusa's Santu 3-1. Well played.
And I mentioned it, you see him very, very far behind. He was 18 points behind with 2 cards left, but Syndicate does some pretty wild things in those last few plays of the game with those coins to spend with the Spender and Sea Jackal and the Graydon Slander combo, which kind of fell out of the meta, but is now back in the meta. And definitely it shows why, I think. Very, very strong finish there, and very, very strong series from Demarcation overall. Congrats to him. Just a great showing. And I think Jaggers are going to move in and interview him for a bit, kind of get his insights onto that series and onto his journey in this Gwent Open #1. Of course, he moves on to the final. Congrats to him. And we have the showdown. Nick against Demarcation. 2 new players, but 2 players that have played very, very cleanly all tournament long.
Yeah, super, super tough matchup, I think, for Santu. So, well played to him. But, with the Philippa on the Reynard, for example, with the Graydon on the tall units, it was going to be an uphill battle in that matchup. And I'm just wondering if we have Demarcation available for interview, so maybe we can have a little bit of a chat with him and see how he's feeling.
I'm gonna have to wait a little bit. Demarcation may be going, to the bathroom, maybe going to, tell his family, hey, I'm in the final. I just won so much money. I'm the best player in the world. We'll find out. The final still has to happen, and Nick has proven to be, a very strong player. Personally, from my point of view, I think Nick has played maybe a bit better. Or at least has shown off his mental game a bit better with some great passes and some great bleeds. But again, both players have made it to the finals, have proven to be competitors that don't fall, don't crumble under pressure, even though this is their first ever tournament appearance. I think a great series overall. Not just the semis, but the whole tournament long, I think, from both players.
Yeah. I can't imagine that Demarcation would rather talk to his family than us, Panda. I mean, come on. This does mean, though, that Nick is running the Chinese gauntlet when it comes to Gwent Open #1. He defeated Sumo in the quarterfinals. No, sorry, the Wangid in the quarterfinals. He defeated Sumo in the semifinals, and now he's coming up against the third and final, it's like the final boss, Chinese player, Demarcation, in the finals. So it's going to be interesting to see how that matchup goes. He did say in his interview that he wanted to play against Demarcation because he would like to play against Syndicate, and in his interview previously, he said he brought Siege because he likes playing it, even though he doesn't think it's as good as the other options. So I think Nick is I feel like he's just having a great time with this tournament, just taking everything in his stride. But there is a lot to play for, because the winner of the finals will qualify for GWENT Masters Season 2, so the big finale at the end of the season. So it's not just about the, the pocket money, although getting paid is always nice. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. There's still a lot at stake.
And Nick, I think also just not only with his play, but kind of his interviews and the information he's given to the viewers, has just had some really like fan favorite answers, kind of being very humble and very just funny overall. I think we're ready to go for the interview though. So Jaggeris, bring it to us.
Hey, Demarcation, congratulations, you've made it to the finals. So I have a few questions for you. I want to start off with game 1 and your sequencing. You opted to play Nilfgaard, right, on blue coin. Were you trying to snipe the Skellige matchup?
No, I wasn't trying to scare. It's like I just feel like overall my NG is like it's good against like all of his decks. It's not like an unwinnable matchup. Whereas like other decks, for example SY, it can get really punished when I kill like NR, and when my NR also has a hard time against his Skellige and Lockdown. So I just think like my NG is all around deck. I wasn't expecting him to kill Skellige at all. I was expecting to see the Lockdown. Some people think it's Lockdown favored, but I think I'm pretty confident in that matchup, so I decided to kill the NG.
And after that first game, it ended in a draw, and you had to kind of reset and basically play the whole thing out again. How are you feeling at that stage? I
mean, like, I also had the same thing yesterday when I played in the quarterfinal against Telva, where my NG also tied, so it was kind of like something like happened again. So it's second time, so it doesn't really affect my emotion or really anything that much. So
yeah, and during your Draug match in round 2, Santu attempted to bleed you. However, you didn't actually have any of your Caravan Vanguards in hand. Were you stressed about the bleed? Were you happy about the bleed, given that you didn't end up playing any of your key pieces? How were you feeling going into the bleed?
Well, when I see my hand in round 2, I think like I was in a very, very bad situation, because I have no Caravan at all, and then like the hand is just not functional. So I think when he opens with Daya, I know he was going to like bleed me super hard. So I decided like the only line I win is by committing leader and go up, cut up, and saving my all my key pieces, for example the reinforcement and Queen Adalia, and trying to bait him to think that like he couldn't troll me, where I think if he had a good hand he could have. So I think that was my only win con, and happily it played out. Like I drove pretty well in round 3, so rewarded for the play. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, and last but not least, you will be going on to play Nick in the finals. He has some, interesting lists. There's the Siege mobilization, for example. How are you feeling in terms of your lineup versus his?
Well, I'm actually feeling not very good about his lineup, because I think I'm pretty unfavored against him. So he has like 2 previous matchups defeated 2 Chinese players already, and if he defeat me in the final, he's gonna be nicknamed a CM player slayer. So I'm kind of scared about that. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, he's building himself a reputation there. Well, congratulations, Demarcation. I feel like you've done, a fantastic job in this, your first ever GWENT Open event, and good luck in the finals.
Well, thank you. Bye.
And we're back. Some great insight there from Demarcation, of course. Also noticing the fact that Nick could become the, like he said, the China player slayer maybe. But before we move on to the finals, there is, a lot we want to tell you guys, a lot we want to share with you guys, a few reveals as well. Of course, due to competitive integrity, we want to give Demarcation some time to rest, some time to think about his matchups, his queuing order, his bans, etc. Nick Gar, of course, having won the first semifinals, has had this time to do that. So going to get a bit of a pause here, going to slow things down a tiny bit. Look at the prize pools, look at the prize kind of distribution here. Demarcation and Nick both above the 4,000, can get even more in the finals now. But Santu and Sumo still a pretty nice chunk of change. Definitely, I think they showed up, they played some pretty good Gwent, and they got pretty good prizes to take home as well.
Yep, not too bad. And while we take a little look here at the bracket so we can see an overview of all of the action for today, maybe if you start to get some leaks in the chat, we'll consider giving you guys a few juicy, spicy leaks in return. So here's all of the action from today. We saw Sumo be defeated by Nick, and then we've just seen Demarcation beat Santu. So we have a Demarcation versus Nick finals, Ukraine versus China, and that is all still to come here at the GWENT Open.
And we've talked about the Werecat bundle, which is kind of the crowdfunding bundle for GWENT Esports for this final of Season 2, so for the GWENT Masters. Now, we want to talk about the bundle that is going to serve as funding for a much closer tournament, Open number 2, which could happen, very soon, online possibly, well, almost guaranteed, but very, very soon. And what do we see here? We see the Earth pack and the Earth bundle and a very nice skin here, Jaggers. What do you think about this board and this Arrakis Venom skin here?
Yeah, this is the Earth bundle. So you've got the Forgotten board. This is very earthy theme. And I feel like the board is really cool. But this Arrakis skin is actually known as the Green Cricket skin. So for those of you guys who maybe know Green Cricket, also one of our analysts here at the GWENT events, a little bit of a homage to him. And you also have the bundle with the avatar, the border, the title, and the meteorite powder. So you have these two options. And I love supporting GWENT Esports. I always pick up the bundles in order to support GWENT Esports. And GWENT Open number 2, we can actually reveal the dates for this event as well. Save the dates, 27th and 28th of June. That's actually right after my birthday. So next month, we'll be back with a heck of a lot more GWENT Esports action. So, if this has been amazing for you, then you don't have to wait too long for the next one.
Yeah, very exciting to have, obviously some difficult circumstances with the COVID pandemic happening worldwide, but CD Projekt Red adapting to the situation and, allowing us to continue with GWENT Esports in these times. Online, of course, some hiccups, but I think overall, Day 2 has been a very smooth experience, and it's only going to get smoother as we kind of perfect, everything with the spectator, client, etc. That being said, maybe another reveal happening. We've talked about the esports scene, but what about the players who just want to see a new card or some more information about, possible expansions coming in the future? Let's find out. There's one more reveal here. I think we're going to see it in just a second. Please, production, help us out. And there we
got
see
enough
it.
Leaks.
Lady
enough
Berserk.
Leaks in the chat. Lady Berserk. Oh my god.
Now, what faction could this be, Jaggers? Give us
I mean, I'm inclined to guess Skellige. That would be my go-to. I obviously have no idea, but given the braids, the stance, the badass lady warrior, also the ginger hair, I feel like Skellige, we have a lot of Scottish people. Yeah, we'll represent. And Scottish people do tend to have ginger hair. My sister, in fact, has ginger hair, and she's Scottish, so I'm an expert in this. And damn, that is a cool card art. I would not want to get on the wrong side of this lady.
And we've seen also the face paint on similar Skellige cards, so I think a pretty good clue there. I think you have to be a Witcher historian to know that is probably going to be a Skellige card. Could be,
Are you from Skellige?
I am, but I'm not, I don't know too much about the lore. I know a little bit, but not too much. Don't put pressure on me. But we saw a squirrel yesterday as well, so, I mean, are they linked? Is it a kind of Viking undead squirrel? We're not sure. We're going to find out at some point, but we also just don't have the answers. It's a mystery for us as well. But again, we're going to give the player that just won the semifinal some time to rest, some time to think about his strategy. Demarcation has to, maybe go to the bathroom and all that. So we have a bit of a break. Jaggers, what's coming up for this kind of segment?
Didn't you do that before the interview? That's what I thought we were waiting on. Now, we do have a bit of a break. So coming up, we have something just to kind of entertain you guys and test your Witcher knowledge going forward. Don't forget, there is also the countdown on the GWENT website. So something else is coming fairly soon, after this tournament, whether it's reveals, whatever it is. I have no idea, but something is coming, and I'm excited. Coming up, we'll have the finals casted by Mick Beard, so Dane and Matt Flake, watch Flake. But that is it from me and Panda, although Panda will be doing all of the spectating in terms of the client for you. So he's the one who moves the mouse and shows you things. So Panda actually still has a little bit more to do. But would love to say a big thank you to CDPR, to you guys at home, to the players, from us here on the caster's desk. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of the tournament, and hopefully we'll catch you next time.
Welcome back, my friends. It is time for the finals here at GWENT Open number 1, Season 2. We are about to see who will be getting a spot in GWENT Masters at the end of the season, currently scheduled for December, and we'll see if we're going to be hitting that date. And Flake, how do you feel about these finals? We got 2 new players, 4 very different deck lists. I think this is going to be a pretty varied and interesting final, and these players have come a long way through a lot of challenges so far.
Yeah, the biggest notable, part about this entire final is, besides the fact that, some great players, is the fact that you have 8 completely different abilities, something that is very rare, especially when you're talking about balance and variety. The fact that both of these players are bringing 4 completely different leaders. There's going to be no mirror besides potential faction matches here. So before we even get to the bans, though, there is some other stuff that people have been waiting for, McBee. So I want to make sure that everybody here is getting a little reward in terms of just hanging out and watching some great Gwent. You guys are also here a little bit for not just the Twitch drops, but also some juicy leaks. So I think that we can go ahead and get one of those out of the way. Why not? Let's just give you a little leak over there.
Take a look. Wait, what? Wow, they're feeding us fast and furious. How many are they going to show it? Okay.
So this is the one that we saw. I don't know what the other one was.
Okay, so we got this one.
Yeah, okay. This one. Okay, so this is the one that McBee, you and I. Okay, so I have no. They're not telling us anything. Okay, so apparently that was a mistake.
We're going to talk about this card here now. Who recognizes this one in the chat? We're just going to move on, guys. Who recognizes this one in the chat? This is something from Hearts of Stone. I believe this is called the Ethereal. This looks pretty creepy, eh, Flake?
Definitely. I mean, this is not a happy picture, apparently. I mean, it's a very intriguing artwork. Again, for those who are very savvy about the lore and Witcher lore, you might know a little bit about this card. But in terms of actual artwork, once again, Gwent has knocked it out of the park. CDPR artists are really on top of their game when it comes to the visualizations. But, no words or any actual clues about factions or, associations of what type of card is it? Is it a special card? Is it an artifact? Is it is it a unit? So there's another little piece of leak. Of course, there's going to be more information coming out over the course of the next little while. We're going to be letting you know about what is going on. You want to stay tuned with twitter.com/playgwent and as well as playgwent.com. Make sure that you're linked and really connected with the various outlets. But that out of the way, the leaks out of the way, we do have a final to get to, right?
Absolutely. That card though, it's interesting because that card represents a piece of Olgierd, but Olgierd's a neutral card, but that looks pretty monstrous. I mean, I don't even know. That could be all sorts of things. My mind is lit up like a city at night. All right, let's talk about this one right here. Nick versus Demarcation, taken on for the first champion of Season 2, Gwent Open number 1 here. That's the money they've already earned. This is the journey we are on here, and it looks like this could be, we're going to have a new champion, that's for sure, and we're going to see the bans in just a moment, but it's been pretty good. Nick had to take out Colamon straight away, Demarcation had to take out Tailbot straight away, and both of them played very well today. And it's going to be an awesome finals. Mobilization, everybody, is in the finals. Not playing favorites, but I think that it's pretty cool to see that Northern Realms ability in there. And at this point, let's talk about the bans. Well, let's talk about the decks first. We're talking big games about the decks. Let's go in.
Yeah,
Flake, take us through this first batch of decks that we see coming in from the player who will be going first in this situation. This is going to be Demarcation. He is on the blue side, going first in games 1, 3, and 5, and Nick will be going first in games 2 and 4 in this final best of 5 series. But let's take a look here. Oh, we're going to see the bans first, right on. Goyatel banned for Nick, and Demarcation will not be playing Imperial Formation, but Mystic Echo gets through. What do you think about this one, Flake?
Well, Mystic Echo getting through is a little bit of a surprise. Again, it has been discriminated against pretty severely in previous rounds because of its just pure power factor. Not to mention, it's a very viable option for both blue coin and obviously on red coin. You're going to be, laying on the pressure. But seeing Mystic Echo hang around, I guess it's just the actual performance of Imperial Formation for Demarcation prior to this is pretty good. I mean, you got to respect your, when you're looking at bans, you're looking at a few things. You're looking at what is your opponent's best class. Obviously, what are the factions just from a static perspective that are just very powerful that you want to to not deal with. But again, the matchups are important. What is your deck strategy? What are you weak to? And allowing yourself to just pick and choose what factions or deck lists that are going to be most probable to actually just, kind of stop you in your tracks. So in this case, I mean, you got to trust Nick R's, assessment of Demarcation's list and say, you know what, I don't think I want to deal with this. And here's Nick R's lists, and we'll go through them real quick here again. Mobilization, Dane, I know that you're a huge fan, and we saw this just not too long ago, earlier this morning. Well, this morning for us, but
this list right here. This list right here, Flake, if I can interject, is probably the reason Mystic Echo gets through. Because of Philippa, because of Falibor, because of a lot of ways that you are able to knock down the numerous engines. You have a pretty strong game against Mystic Echo, so that could be the main reason. But yeah, continue on with the with what we have to see here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you're spot on about that tactical decision, of course, with the double ball. We saw that go through. Deadeye ambush, no Radia, no Feign Death. So it is just a very, very aggressive Elven Swarm. And then second wind with the Ankrite Great Swords and the Dagger Two Blades. Now off to Demarcation over here. Lead us through this one, Dane.
We got Imperial Formation with Damien. We're going to see a lot of poison probably occurring. Mystic Echo, a little double waters, lots of Dryad fledglings, lots of engines and harmony with some extra control elements. I do like the Mullane there. Wildcard Syndicate, Graydon and Passiflora, making sure that there's a strong win condition one way or another. And finally, Uprising with a Drog list. Now, we're not going to see the Imperial Formation list, as that has proven, like you said, Demarcation's made it look pretty good in this series. But we are going to be getting into the games as soon as the players are ready. So I think I didn't mean to hijack that. I just got really, I saw it click right there. Philippa is a huge threat to Mystic Echo right there. So I think that's probably, he needs to catch that matchup, but at the same time, he needs to catch the matchup. That's the main thing here. You see the players getting ready here, Demarcation and Nick in separate parts of the world. Demarcation actually playing from the US, Nick from originally hailing from China, and Nick playing from the Ukraine at the moment. And I see that Superman tent people were talking about.
Yeah, man, that's the Fortress of Solitude over there. So it could either be a,
yeah,
it could be a place for a really quiet meditation or, very, very private celebration. Either way, both players are kind of just getting in the zone over there. And it's worth noting as well that, I mean, you're talking about how you're going through with Uprising and Mystic Echo is allowed through. You're allowing Mystic Echo through because you feel like you can beat it with the mobilization deck, right? With Siege and all the Siege engines, the control factors and control elements. So I believe so. If you want to ensure that matchup, this is a possibility where you might see a fifth, like this one going to 5 games, because it's a possibility that if you want to be able to win and beat Mystic Echo on your best deck, that you have to make sure that it lines up correctly and that you're picking the right factions at the right times here. In this case, as we see right now, it's going to be a Northern Realms mirror, as Demarcation is on the blue coin at the bottom of the deck, representing Uprising. Mobilization is what's Nick's taking to the party on the top of the board over there. And as we get rolling over here, the mulligans are just about complete. Again, just to keep you all up to speed, Uprising is the ability of bringing in where you have 3 charges to boost a unit by 1. Once you expend all those charges, spawn a Lyrian Scytheman. On the other end of the board, the leader ability is Mobilization. You have 1 order to play a copy of an allied unit from your deck, boost it by 2, and give it Zeal. Now, the Zeal I don't think is very important. Obviously, what Nick's strategy here is just to drop the scenario and immediately clone the Trebuchet. As the Mauler,
the battering ram is also a target, though. The battering ram is also a target, so you can Zeal the battering ram. There is that little bit of extra spice there, because this is a Radia list. It does have the powerful Radia and Seize combo. So when you're running single copies of bronzes, you can add all the pieces of the scenario and just have that extra chance. That way, you can't get caught with a bad draw, perhaps, where you have the Trebuchet in your hand and you were relying on that for your leader. So less careful mulligan specifically. One of the weaknesses of the deck sometimes is that you could somehow get caught with the wrong set of siege engines, which is why we see the inclusions of things like Siege Ladder, which is not usually a popular inclusion in Northern Realms, but we've seen them crew it already, and it does help the scenario's progress, as the Maulers are just locked in a stare right now. First one to blink loses.
Well, I guess they're kind of just looking at each other, a little mirror match in the most obvious ways here. They're just kind of staring out. The genie comes in, just the early flip on that option, because you want to make sure that that Temple Guard gets 3 bodies to go ahead and boost up by 1. Temple Guard, a dual faction option here, along with Syndicate, as it's played on the melee row, boost 3 adjacent units by 1. The Ballista is going to come in and maybe relieve a little bit of that boost on the Mauler, and it's hiding a charge of 2 again. So the Mauler is holding onto a charge, the Ballista is holding onto a charge. So Uprising is going to have a little bit of work to do if it wants to keep its units in the green, which it always so vehemently looks to do.
Demarcation moving next here. So the strategies are very different for these players. Siege has a very strong long game and a very threatening long game as well, but it does also have explosive points in Radia and big reset potential through Baron. And the control side with Philippa just allows you to be very flexible. On the other hand, Demarcation does need to make a large setup. It's a little bit easier for him to do that, but unfortunately, he doesn't have things like a Dahlia to get the extra push here. But double Vanguard will make this pretty sweet Voimir. Will make a pretty sweet Voimir play as things continue on here. Siege Tower coming down. Now that Bomb Heaver in Demarcation's hand is likely only going to be able to stop a bombardment. We're going to have to see how much value that will really deny, and if that's actually going to be, you know, the excellent trade that you would expect perhaps from Passiflora or Masquerade Ball. I almost forgot the name of it.
Well, in this case, like we were mentioning earlier, the real value with that leader ability, with the mobilization ability, is that you drop Siege, and then you're able to go ahead and pull out the other Trebuchet to immediately get the second trigger on the scenario. And the Bomb Heaver, like you mentioned, is it really valuable if the two main triggers are already done? The payoff at the end with Bombardment, it's a fantastic one, assuming you have all the siege engines running and going. You can get some really good damage in. However, is it really worth it at a certain point if you're playing a lot of control? But I feel like that's going to be a call that Demarcation makes a little bit later. I mean, you never really want to just toss away a Bomb Heaver just to prolong a round like that. I think it's something that, you might hang on to, because in the case where Nick perhaps draws his Treb rather than pulls it out of the deck, then that really will give Demarcation that seam to walk in and destroy the siege, with only 1 trigger versus 2.
So Nick has to consider a surrender and double proc of the orders right here to get ahead. It is enough points, or it's only 10 points, so he does need a little bit more than that, I believe. Yeah, he does need a little bit. It's 12. No, that's the 12 point.
8 plus, 8
we
plus
got it.
4.
We got it. Yeah, that should be enough. He's just deciding here.
He also has the double vitality, actually.
No, he's got, it looks like he's at more than enough. He's valuing the surrender because it means he's going to go for that long round. So we're going to see Nick go for that long round in round 3, get a crucial surrender, perhaps on an armored row of Revenants or an armored row of Vanguards. Finding the line there, I think, is going to be really beneficial. It's going to be just a huge amount of value, but will it be enough? Because Adalia's in the hand now, double Vanguard and reinforcements. Now, the bigger the rows, the better the surrender. But at a certain point, is it going to be enough?
So Nick goes ahead and tosses back the Trebuchet, and sometimes if I'm planning on going into a long round, if I plan on not playing past 7 cards in round 2, if I'm in control like Nick's in control, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll keep that mulligan fodder in my hand to ensure that I don't draw it off of a bad draw later, so it's an easy mulligan later. So there's still the option perhaps that Nick might play, but no, he's just going to go for it. And he's just making sure that he maximizes every single mulligan and taking the risk perhaps that he draws the Trebuchet later, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I think he's going to be okay. It's just Demarcation now.
I think he still has the battering ram in there, unless it did come down in round 1, and I'm just I'm forgetting it quick at the moment. But it is still. You do make a very, very good point, though. Saving the cards that you are almost assuredly wanting to pull from your deck, having those in round 3 as a mulligan is very good here. As a Caravan Vanguard used. So toning down some of the row power, trying to take maybe a little bit of value away from surrender, because at this point Demarcation is playing around that for as long as possible. But he's got a big row strategy, so it's going to be hard.
Well, you had to get rid of something, and you have the Adalia to get the other caravan. You have the reinforcements, which is probably going to target the caravan anyways, and you don't want to flood the board where you're losing perhaps some space for revenants to actually appear. And so there's the other mulligan. See what he draws there. Okay, that's a siege engine, but it's not the bad one, so it's okay. The trebuchet lives in the deck, so you will be able to double trigger that siege if necessary. And we see how this is going to go. Demarcation obviously is probably not going to be deposited onto the ranged hero, because that is going to be a tough situation for him to endure, especially in a 10-card round, just sitting under the bombardment of those trebuchets.
We saw Demarcation draw. He drew his Scytheman. And then he did a little bit of thinking, and then started to mulligan everything but the Scytheman. So the reinforcements here, I also like not going for the row strategy, basically minimizing the amount of units that will be on the board at any given time. The shield is nice here as well, because it's not armor, so Surrender doesn't care about it. But also holding on to that Scytheman, it could end up being that the Scytheman is the reinforcement target, but he always had that option with Leader, so I think that there's a little bit more planning involved here. A lot of boosted units, even in the face of so much damage potentially from Siege, Trebuchet. He can't stack a row. Siege invites you to not do that, but the Surrender invites you to not do that, but Siege also makes the back row very unappealing. So I really like the way Nick's assembled the deck, but Demarcation certainly has a lot of points in his hand.
Well, that's the issue that you're hitting right on the head. There is the fact that, you know, if you're Demarcation, obviously there's no secret that there's going to be a siege eventually coming down the pipe, and you know that there's row punish in there. So you got to pick your evil. You got to pick your spots at this point. You got to wonder what the situation is. Obviously, Nick R is most likely to be mulliganing hard for that siege, and if the surrender's in hand, well, so be it. But at a certain point, you got to make you can't play scared. You got to stick to your own strategies, because obviously you're going to be punished in the range row, and if you avoid the range row, you're going to be punished on the row stack. So, we saw it in the previous round where Nick R had that kind of stranglehold on the blood scent, where the Oriana just never really hit the board in the back row because of the trebuchets that were just dominant in that back row, to making it so unappealing. And as you can see here, the clones are in full order. You got Voimir, you've got Drog ready to go. There's so many options right now for Demarcation to just stack on the points in the control element. Mata comes through as well, and now you've got you got Philippa as well to just clean up a lot of this.
Demarcation is going to get a lot of boosts on the board and make it very, very appealing for Nick to start using as much control as possible, because not just because of Voimir, but also the Temple Guard now that Mata drew. Trying to get the most value possible would be to be playing it where those boosts will be cashed in by cards like Visigurd and Scytheman, and Demarcation's ability to cash in as much value as possible against such a damage-heavy deck that Nick is running right now is going to be his key to victory if he has a chance here. As in a mirror, going first can be difficult. Your nightmare, Drog touching down.
Yeah, Drog touching down, getting rid of all the status effects on the transformation. So the shield is gone, but the boosts remain, and that's fine. Boosts are not a status effect. So the transformation that Drog has essentially converted on all those humans, where they're now revenants, means that the shield on that first revenant is now gone. So perhaps that might be an option to target for Anseus, but there's now six individual pings to go ahead and do the dirty work for Demarcation. And again, when one of these revenants completes a death blow, meaning that its order or its damage that it dishes out completes a kill, it will summon another copy of itself, a base copy, a 3-point copy revenant.
Now, this is interesting. Demarcation already is at 7 cards on the 9-card row limit, so the ability to really pump out a lot of extra damage from the revenants, or a lot of extra value, is limited. But of course, limited, you still have these 6 damage worth in pings while also holding Visigurd. So threatening at this point to boost up these units, or perhaps cash in on the big cards that care about boost. Nick has to think about this. And here comes the armor and the boosts. The surrender is definitely, Demarcation is saying, if you're going to use it, use it. And here it is.
There it goes, and that was a great time for it. He waited out the Voimir, so strips the armor, takes a little bit of damage. Now, some of them are still in the boost, but you have done a lot of good damage against the other reps now in the that are in the red, which is playing against the Uprising strategy. Once again, looking at what's going on here, eventually you have the Temple Guard, which is a melee effect. You also have the Visigourd, which gets the formation, so the Zeal on the front row as well, but you're running out of space. So this is a problematic situation for Demarcation, who has to now start committing cards to the back row just to preserve some of that space if he wants to.
I think you just start cannibalizing these Revenants. You use the Revenants to kill the other Revenants. Now you have Revenants in the white, and then you start using. Then you have a booster available with the Temple Guard to bring them all back up to boosted to a boosted state. And now your Visigourd is primed potentially, and as well your Scytheman can come down as well. In fact, he's going to opt to not do that. Play the Scytheman at this point earlier because he's going to hold on. He's going to hold on to these cards a little bit longer. I think he may have missed some opportunities in boost, but he's got a plan. I think he's got a plan.
Yeah, I mean, you got to trust in what he's doing, and the option that you put forward there of cannibalizing your own units, yes, because you are getting, a little bit of value, small amounts of value, I suppose, but the value is going to come, frankly, in just taking those red units, the damage units, and turning them into neutral, base strength that you can then boost up, which then will give you bonuses with another Scytheman, with Visigourd getting more charges, etc. And now Sheila in the back row damaging a unit by 2, and the order ability that follows up with it is exactly the same. Just worth noting, Demarcation does have the Royal Decree in his hand. The Royal Decree can get any unit out of the deck. Looking at what the options are for him, there's some pretty powerful stuff there. There's a Philippa. There's there's a Philippa. You've got an Anseus as well as the Bloody Baron.
Those are the big ones. Here comes Falibor, another huge card, taking care of Sheila, and then applying a little bit of extra damage here on the back to the Royal Guard, giving just some extra point potential, but not cashing in any of these pings here, not removing these that Radovid's Royal Guard in the back. Demarcation, now I've seen him play a couple times now, valuing these units that hold on to charges. Here's Philippa, and now Demarcation is trying to get as many boosts as possible. He's got a lot of damaged units. He still has the opportunity to perhaps turn them into to convert them. At this point, I think the row is a bit more free. There is a little bit less worry about that. And the Temple Guard will be able to get a lot of these units within Uprising leader ability distance, which means that Scytheman will be able to connect and hit nicely.
Yeah, if you put the Temple Guard in the front row, and there we go, you could boost those up over there, use one of your charges once again on one of those Revenants, use it on the Scytheman in the back row. Again, that's another 2 green units, boosted units, to maximize the potential of the Scytheman that's going to be generated from the exhausting of those orders. But still no Siege. Again, Siege hasn't really shown up yet, and the Bomb Heaver once again is just waiting in the wings to jump into action to get its job done. And there it is. Finally, the Siege is going to go ahead and deposit itself on the back row. Yep.
Radovid's moving in.
The mobilization is going to find the other trebuchet in the back row, which is going to trigger the second chapter of the siege, which is the battering ram. So suddenly we have a little bit more engine pieces, some damage over time in the back there. That's just going to... So I said this the other day about pick at you, which became Pikachu. So there's some
totally
Pikachu
heard it. I totally heard it when you said it, yeah.
I caught it afterwards, and I was like, do I just roll with this? And then someone was tweeting out about it, and I said, all right. So we got some Pikachu damage in the back there.
Yep, the damage is definitely, it's the value on these trebs. He's going to hit the value. Visigourd is available to start removing some of these cards, but since the bombardment won't trigger, the urgency is a little less. This game is very close right now. Vincent doesn't have a great target because look how low Falibor is. That would have been the best target.
Yeah, Falibor was eating some damage there early on from Philippa, as well as the Trebs took a couple shots at it there. And the Bomb Heaver comes in and saves the day against that bombardment. Still 2 charges left for the Uprising. You've got currently 1, 2, 3, 4 options of a boost, but there it is. The Royal Decree comes in, finds the Philippa, which is going to put an end to that Trebuchet and just spread a little bit more love around.
Why take anything that Vincent can hit? Although you do have Uprising, so you can boost things, but I do like the idea of just just taking down as many things as possible and bringing the board to a state where the Revenants can get perhaps a little bit more work done. Here comes the Uprising. The Peasants are here. Scytheman clocking in at a nice solid 9 points, and again, all charges maintained on the Revenants.
And that's a good target there for the Prince Adseus, coupling up with the engineering solution that Radia delivered. And a 7 and a shield is going to just trade so nicely, because the return damage on the duel is only going to bounce off that shield, meaning that Adseus is nice and tidy. But here comes Visigurd with 7 massive charges.
Drog looks like is going to make his way into Nick's nightmares, because this is an incredible amount of points that Vincent isn't quite capable of doing. Vincent is good for a lot of stuff, but in a Northern Realms mirror, there's no gigantic cards like Frighteners. There's no gigantic cards like Goliath or Egern. So Vincent is just not going to get the job done here, as Demarcation is up 1 point here in the finals. Gwent Open number 1 here of season 2. So far, so good for Demarcation. Flake, what do you think about that matchup?
Well, the mirror match was interesting because it wasn't exactly a true mirror in the sense that it was mobilization. It was Uprising versus Uprising, which we're very used to by now in this current meta, especially even in a tournament meta. Most other players did bring Uprising, as it is one of the top tier decks from Northern Realms. So just seeing Uprising go through is not necessarily much of a surprise, but perhaps this is also a scenario where we're talking about earlier, where you said maybe this is something where Nick wants to match up his mobilization versus the Mystic Echo. So that's still on the board, because if he had won through with this, then that deck is gone. It's long gone. It's waiting on the bus for the ride to the victory party. But unfortunately for Nick, he does take the loss, but it's still open there. As you can see, these are the bans and the decks that gone through. Demarcation is up 1-0. Uprising taking the day against mobilization. Elven Deadeye, the Deadeye Ambush has been banned versus the Imperial the mobilization. Not mobilization, Imperial Formation of Demarcation. So they are this is not correct, but it's all good. We are all friends here, so there was a little bit
we can share each other's names. It's okay.
Definitely, we're all friends here, as again, Demarcation has engaged his cloaking technology to really put one over on Nick. Nick might retreat to his, again, Superman Fortress of Solitude on the side there in response. But these are all the mind games that are replaying, that everyone's playing sort of as part of the piece here. But mobilization didn't get it done. I know that you're a big fan. You are the Northern Realms faction ambassador. So how did you feel that little civil war going on between both of those factions?
Well, what I was about to say, I do like the fact that Nick still has mobilization available to combat Mystic Echo, and he may just continuously queue in trying to catch that, because he may feel confident with the rest of his lineup. As he said in the interview post-game in the first game of the semifinals, this is the opponent that he would have preferred to have, because he feels like his entire list does very well against Syndicate, his entire lineup. So with that, Syndicate could actually be the weak link that Nick will be hoping to exploit, and perhaps catching good matchup with Mystic Echo will bring us there. But we were going to be getting into the game very soon. I believe the invites have been set up.
And that's definitely a worthy point to make there, is the fact that given the format being Conquest, you need to win with every single deck. So if your deck is tuned to beat one of your opponent's decks, eventually your opponent will have to, even if your opponent wins the first two and they're set up with that last deck, if your decks are extremely strong against their final deck, you could just come back with the reverse sweep. That's why reverse sweeping is not such an unfathomable thing as it would be in other sports, for instance, because in this case, sometimes if you're tuning all of your lineups to just beat that one deck, target that one popular deck, then you might go down 0-2, but then you're up against your favorable matchups one after another to get that reverse sweep going in. So if that is the actual strategy that Nick R is taking, if he wants to target Syndicate, eventually he'll have to make that, he will be met with that one-on-one, and he might be able to convert on all 3 occasions. But for now, he's in a 1-0 hole as we go into the next matchup. Nick R representing Skellige against Demarcation, taking on that wild card. So this is that wild card matchup that we're talking about. See how this one goes and shakes out as he is on blue coin, Nick.
Nick is taking the his Skellige list in, which is a pure greatswords, you could say. Running Wild Boar of the Sea, Dagger 2 blades, as well as double greatswords, and Skellige Storm and Avalok as well. So lots of weather effects, lots of constant damage, and it could be enough to wear down and bring a number of these engines in reach to fight against Wildcard as Santa Croc. Nick making sure that he's flexing with his cosmetics here. Santa Croc on Crate is here, leading the Skellige army against the streets of the Syndicate.
There are some pretty damn cool cosmetics, I gotta say. That's definitely one of my favorites out there right now, is that one. That or Disco Spider with the cool neon lights on it. I still feel like that's something that needs to happen. But here we are. Again, like you said, this is a more pure great sword list. And when we say great sword list, what we mean are cards like Greatsword and Dagger that have a lot of individual instances of damage to benefit the Greatsword ability. So if we take a look at what the Greatsword does, basically the Greatsword himself, when he's on a row, any damage done to the opposing row, any instances of damage, being it 1 damage, 2, whatever, it will grow by 1. So that's why you have cards like Skellige Storm, which deals multiple instances of 1 damage. Cards like Avalok, damage over time from the weather. So these are improved.
The Passiflora is getting bombed down in front of you. This is absolutely insane. This is such a good early catch for Nick. Demarcation didn't get the satisfaction of just getting the Passiflora to resolve like he did against Tailbot. So he still has to. These ladies still have to work. So the blind eyes are going to keep coming down. The bonded ability in effect right now, but quick answers from Nick. He knows how to set this up, put things in reach of control, because these engines are going to be a big problem.
Definitely, and that's something that Demarcation was able to get away with last in his earlier matchup in the quarterfinals, where he was able to just go ahead and drop the Passiflora and have no response from Tailbot, where that Bomb Heaver was just sitting around, no protection, no Azar. It was just a matter of, all right, let's see it. Let's see if we can get this going on red coin and really push the tempo here against this Greatsword deck, because one of the important things you want to do against Greatsword is win that round 1. You want to make sure that you can bleed them out. Going long against Greatswords is a devastating instance, especially since there's resurrection abilities. There's so many ways to get points over time. Skellige Storm, Wild Boar of the Sea with the massive sweep, as well as right there, the Giga Scorpion Decoction is another instance of those multiple pings of damage that just really benefit Greatswords and Daggers. So I think that Demarcation tried to pull one over on Nick and see if he just, it's one of those situations of like, all right, you have it or you don't, but if you cannot respond, I'm in a great spot.
Demarcation moving the the Longship back to the back row, preventing its ability from occurring as it is row locked to the melee row. And yeah, you said it. If you give Greatsword's last say, we've seen it in the tournament, you've probably seen it on the ladder. It is really unbelievable what they're able to do when they just bring Dagger or a Greatsword out of the graveyard and just hit Wild Boar of the Sea in however long the round needs to be. But the point swing is absolutely massive. It is extremely hard to deal with it, even if you hit some of your biggest combos in some cases. So I would say that this is win round 1 or lose in probably the biggest case, as Nick quickly answers with his row removal. He dedicated Hammond to stopping Imka more than anything, because that prevents any further it prevents a lot of coin gain. Slows down the flying Redanian, slows down any potential growth in engines like Sol. So, and the plays are quite slow here. Fist Tech, Sea Urchins, and Sea Jackal. Demarcation may not be able to put up the points needed to get that last say.
Yeah, and judging by the cards that he's playing, it feels like he was really, really ready to go ahead and commit to this round, which is a good strategy. It's the smart money on this, is you want to make that happen. Taking advantage of the self-poison, the Fistech Trafficker, when poisoning a friendly unit, will gain 3 coins. So that is what happens as MK has decided to come out of the shadows of the range row and right into the spotlight. But again, when she's doing that, she ain't earning money, so it's not working out that way. But I feel like the Philippa play might be one of the more swingy plays in terms of longevity and value, in terms of stealing perhaps something that might come back to haunt him. But, you know, what do you steal if you're Philippa? Do you steal the dagger if he plays it, because that might not show up? Do you steal that greatsword even though he has another one? Do you steal a Wild Boar of the Sea if he plays it early? There's so many ways to just generate damage and recover those units that have been killed. So that Philippa, it has so many targets, but at the end, it doesn't really matter because there's so many other ways to pressure.
Well, it matters when you are overflowing with coins and you have just a way of converting all those coins into a steal, which is doubling up on the value. One of the biggest strengths of the card is that even when she's quote unquote, well, I mean, she's not even close to dead, but even when she is not stealing a valuable engine, she's still taking a lot of points away from your opponent. So the opportunity is there to make a steal. Unfortunately, it's like you said, there's just another greatsword around the corner. The resurrection brings another one, and the deadly thing is dagger, 2 blades. That's the card that is going to make or break the round. If he is able to come out of the graveyard with a Wild Boar of the Sea final play, Nick will surely have a blowout victory.
Scorpion Decoction goes and gets rid of one of the Slice Duck Try, and Dagger 2 Blades is still in the hand. As we have seen again, the Dagger 2 Blades has a similar effect to the Greatsword, but it does not discriminate against what row is being damaged. It'll take every damage into account. As we see now, that Greatsword is just very slowly coming into prominence here. That 12 points seems massive, but man, is that just the beginning of the story for that greatsword. As we saw, it just doubles up on the value of this Scorpion Decoction. 6 individual pings of damage means 6 individual boosts for that greatsword as well. And again, factoring in the bleed, there's so many other ways for this to get really out of hand. As Saul shows up on the back row, 8 coins in the pocket there for demarcation, which means that it's only a boost of 2. You're so close yet so far on a boost of 3, and a 17-point deficit now for demarcation on even cards.
Now, Nick has to be careful. If he plays Dagger and isn't able to bring it out of range of Philippa, which would be hard, as Demarcation does have 8 coins, he won't be able to pull it out of the graveyard, making that combo, making that dream a reality, I think. So it's a little bit harder for him to choose what to play here. He can go ahead and get an 8-point Skellige Storm, but it's not the row for his greatsword. He's actually going to go ahead and play Wild Boar of the Sea, make that the graveyard target, but that could get stolen. I don't think it's enough, and I don't think you risk it when you're behind by this many points to steal anything more or pass. Yeah, this is going to be it. Last save for Skellige. That sounds pretty good to me.
That's a tough spot to be in for your demarcation, because you know what's coming. You know that it's going to be a long round, and you know what that last point potential is. And like you're saying there, that is a juicy target for demarcation to steal with the Philippa. But when you have such a deficit of points, it's not enough, because that Philippa was only representing 11 points. Plus you had the bleed going on in the back row. So really, what are what can you commit on top of that afterwards to come in and take the round without going down cards and giving Skellige last say anyways? So hanging on to the Philippa might just be a matter of taking a target of opportunity away from Nick R in round 3. Dry pass is what's easily expected here to preserve that last say for Nick, as the Sea Jackal is the sacrificial lamb for round 2 left off. But you know, if you're the Sea Jackal, it's probably better that way, because you're about to witness an absolute bloodbath in round 3.
Quite possibly. Another reason why Nick is happy to take this into a longer round 3 is he's holding on to things like Skellige Storm and Avalok. This is a deck that's built for a long round, and but also built for a very, very strong last say play in a single combo. So you can try to get all sorts of things done, but at the end of the round, if the board is good enough, Dagger and Wild Boar can get you out of all sorts of situations. So Demarcation is going to have to get the best of the best. He's going to have to get a lot of points back on Graydon, of which it's going to be hard because there isn't a lot of base power that Nick is offering. There is no Goliath. There is no Bloody Baron or anything like that. 5 is going to be as high as it gets.
Stunning Blow could be a nice clean answer to that Uwald, but I'm assuming Uwald's going to come in and it's not going to hit the board unless there's an absolute, convertible target on it where all the coins come in and perhaps get rid of a greatsword. No resurrection effects out of hand. So that graveyard greatsword is essentially going to stick around there. Again, Royal Decree in Nick's hand. If we can take a look at the actual library there, the deck of Nick R, to see what potential targets are there for that. You could get the Ermion. There's a Defender, which is a big deal as well. That is a juicy target, as Grimace there is able to also purify some of the bounties or potential poisons that are going to be deposited on Nick's units.
I think that was actually a protector right there. I think there is no Ermion for Nick, so there is no access to future Freyas or anything like that. Only one Freya.
Grimace, that's my bad.
Yes, Grimace being available for poison, as we can see that. Well, in Demarcation's list, poison does exist, but Grimace also exists. So it's good that Demarcation isn't counting on poison here, as we are in the final round of the second game here. The Longship. Ship versus ship, one before and after picture right here. It's funny. Who's better at bringing ships out of the graveyard, Syndicate or Skellige? Find out as Philippa coming down. Now, this is something that Nick was hoping to avoid when it comes to his bigger engines. The Longship's a pretty good thing to take away though early on, but this could easily be a Stunning Blow answer.
Well, the Longship, if you're counting the actual units that are in the hand of Demarcation, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units in the hand. So that Longship is potentially representing an additional 5 points. So stealing it is not just stealing the 4 points from your opponent, but the 5 potential damage that you're going to incur afterwards, which could be compounded by the fact that there's a greatsword on the board or a dagger on the board. So it's pretty spooky about leaving that there. Nick R has an immediate answer if he just drops the Stunning Blow on it. It's unfortunately... that never feels good when you're killing your own units like that, but Avalok is a good answer as well, dropping Fog. Again, Fog is something you'll see if you go to playgwent.com. There's a spooky countdown that's under a nice little foggy blanket, but Avalok's going to go ahead and put some more damage. And Dane, this is what we're talking about for damage over time and just instances, unique instances of damage. Bleed, Weather, Skellige Storm, even that the Longship there that was sitting there at one point. This is all just setting the table for a very hungry dagger or a very hungry greatsword.
Well, one of the best parts about Bleed and Weather is essentially putting an engine on the opponent's side of the board that works for you. So in a situation where you're trying to play around control, or you're trying to force your opponent into getting less value on the reactive cards. That's one of the reasons why I've always really enjoyed the Weather and Bleed, because being able to pass with passive points, obviously not happening here in round 3, but just in general, having decks that are able to generate so many passive points without your unit being on the board, always been favorable. And this deck really pushes, this deck is so focused on that theme of damage, of individual instances of damage. Demarcation coming down here, not paying the tribute. Just going ahead to grab that money because he has a lot of things to spend it on. Ewald specifically will allow the removal of almost anything. It's hard to get things out of Ewald's reach at this point, but Last Say is the biggest part of Nick's arsenal here.
That's right. If this is done in a in the optimal way, Ewald can come down and spend some of those coins to make sure that there's or spend some of those coins to go ahead and take out that greatsword. Ewald here, of course, spend 2 coins, deal 2 damage if he's sitting on the melee row, and there is no delay on that effect. It's an immediate effect if he wants to pay the cost for it, as we can see him come down here and probably going to just immediately answer that greatsword. And Nick R does not have a resurrection effect besides his leader, which I believe he'll just sit and wait for to use with in conjunction with something like Dagger.
And look at that Stunning Blow coming out just like you predicted it. Stunning Blow destined to stun Ewald, as that was basically it. As soon as he was played into the fog, his fate was sealed. All the money left on the board right now is going to be going into paying Graydon's tribute. Azar does get him into that amount of money, as well as Kalkstein. It also could involve the bank. We don't know what the bank is able to see or pull, but we can see there's not a lot of great stuff in there. We know Wildcard is going to be pulling the Slander for Graydon, but otherwise it's really just a bunch of bronzes that are going to be, at least he has a spender in the Sea Jackal. but there isn't that much left. Meanwhile, Nick does have the ability to use Morkvarg against anything that ends up getting boosted here, be it Graydon or be it a Sea Jackal, and of course also has Skellige Storm to deal a lot of damage to the row and perhaps deal with these defenders.
All right, so this is where this could be a little bit, spooky and problematic, is the timing for Nick R with these cards, because you got Skellige Storm and you want to deposit that and in a good spot, and now he's spreading out those units, meaning that Skellige Storm is getting a little bit worse. There's a defender there, meaning that if he wants to put something to connect with Morkvarg, if he's going to have to deal with that defender at the same time, there's so much to think about here as the Skellige Storm has a 2-turn timer. So is he going to go ahead and now, load up on the front row behind that defender? And how do you get rid of that defender, I suppose, is another question that needs to be asked.
Oh man, I think all those cards, all the cards that he didn't want were at the top right there. That was an expensive trip to the bank, more like a trip to the casino.
Oh, you're just not betting on the right numbers there, McBee. Red 9 never failed me. Don't take my word for it. There we go. So there's the Royal Decree coming in with the Grimace. Grimace is going to go ahead and take out that the defender status. Purification, again, is not just something that you want to get rid of locks or poisons. You can get rid of things like defender as well, meaning that Scarab now has lost a little bit of its courage and is just going to be one of the boys.
It invites Demarcation to use Graydon here. Kalkstein, of course, will be the play because Kalkstein doesn't play. Kalkstein isn't really doing anything at this point except for gaining a little bit of money. The play of Slander will generate coins, so Demarcation could spend to bring the Sea Jackal up if he wanted to, but of course he's playing around anything that deals with a boost like Morkvarg. So playing Morkvarg here, Morkvarg will just be hitting for 6. Nick is definitely within a decent amount of points considering how many things are on the board that will be hit. Morkvarg at least will put a damaged unit on the board no matter what. Probably just hitting Kalkstein as the Jackal's going to be boosted no matter what.
This is one of those scenarios where it's just like a turn too soon for Morkvarg, and you don't want to commit the dagger because it's just going to die to a bounty and then Graydon, right? So, at the end of Demarcation's last turn is where he spends all the rest of the coins, where Graydon might be boosted and where the Sea Jackal might spend the remainder of those coins to be boosted as well, and that's an ideal target for Morkvarg, especially in conjunction with dagger. But he's going to go ahead and just drop it right now, just free and clear without any protection of the actual resurrection. But I guess what you can do in this case, and what Nick is probably opting to do, is that if that dagger dies, he's just going to resurrect it and then use the Morkvarg on the boosted target to get those points back. So this is part of that versatility and the just the variety of options that this second wind list can do to generate those points, because you can res the boat in conjunction the Wild Boar of the Sea in conjunction with dagger. You can resurrect Morkvarg, bring him back, bring them back. There's so many different ways to actually get that combo to go.
And there you can see the money has been spent on the Sea Jackal. Graydon will also get a tribute, but the money on Sea Jackal, Morkvarg's constant pings, and bringing back dagger. I think Nick has done the math. We got a little calculator casting here. Does he have it with no? Did he not spend the coin? Oh, well,
no, but he's not spending the coin because the more he spends is the more pings for Morkvarg to boost.
Oh, he's just going to go ahead and play Wild Boar here?
I wonder if that was...
I mean, Wild Boar is strong enough, right?
Another tie, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, was that? There must have been a different sequence there, or I could just be missing it. I could just be missing it. The Sea Jackal was boosted to 9, correct? Which means that it would have taken 6 pings, meaning that the dagger would come out for 4. The 6 pings are 6 damage on the other side and a boost of 6. So that's a 12 points plus the 5 for Morkvarg is 17 plus the 4 initial for dagger is it's 21 points that combo could have done. So is that combo better than the Morkvarg into boat? That's where the math lies essentially, because resurrecting dagger there was 4 plus dagger was 10 points versus the boar, which I guess represented more than 10 points at the end of the day.
So much math going on, and I'm glad that I get to call the action and not calculate the action, because that at a certain point, that like 90-second timer, it really bears down on you. But you got to trust the players to make the right choices in most cases. But that is going to come down to a revision and see, was that the correct play or was that the best? Because it could have happened, McBee, where the best potential option for that outcome was a tie.
I mean, it was, I think in the situation where Demarcation didn't spend the points, I think he just at that point knew what, like, it could have just been, okay, well, if this is the play, then this is the tie. So yeah, not playing into extra pings on Morkvarg, that could have been the turning moment. I felt like there were a lot of really key parts in that game, and when it comes down to a tie, you know, that's pretty granular. So we're waiting for a little bit of a remake here. 3 ties in this Gwent Open. I believe that's a record. I think that's a record. 2 previously might have been the record, but I'm trying to even remember 2. I know Protea tied in a finals once.
When I look at people's scores, you know, like their pro ladder statistics, and it's like, you know, the 900 games, the 600 wins, whatever, and then I look at like, how does this guy have like 65 draws or 45 draws or 50 draws? I'm like, do they really draw that much? And that just testament to how closely skilled these players are in terms of you know, how close these games can actually be. And we've seen it, you know, this tournament itself is the fact that there have been 3 draws, and I think even possibly more. I know that we had a draw in one of our earlier sets yesterday. There's a draw right now. There might have been a draw earlier today.
Yes,
there was a draw. Yeah, so there's just draws like crazy going on here. And again, the if those are, for those who are wondering, why didn't Demarcation boost his Sea Jackal with the remaining coins? The reason for that, of course, is the fact that you can resurrect Dagger, and then Morkvarg will just exponentially get points off of those pings. Every ping that he makes is you know, returned in point value for Dagger. So him saving that money means that resurrecting Dagger in that case would have or he's limiting the amount of points that Dagger would have grown with that Morkvarg combination. So smart move by Demarcation to not spend those points. And I guess if the math is correct, then you know, I got to sit down and the thing about it is I forgot how much that Wild Boar of the Sea was, because if that Wild Boar of the Sea you know, was more than 10, then that's where you needed to be. Otherwise, the Morkvarg was, or so the Dagger was 10, and if the Wild Boar was better than 10, then that's the deal. So that's my story.
I think the matchup was made very clear right there. How strong and what a good position Nick was at all times. We saw Demarcation down to his final bronzes in the deck. He got everything he needed. I'm sure that the draws have haunted some players in this matchup, and I don't think that was it. But even with everything that he needed in the order, that Bomb Heaver was obviously very huge to have, and that ultimately, well, in round 1, it ultimately kept him in a position where even the last say with Skellige wasn't enough there, but it was very close. And I think Demarcation, if he doesn't hit everything again, he may not quite have a good a chance.
And this also is worth looking back to that initial play of coming in with that Passiflora, taking that risk of just dropping it on the red coin. The first play was just coming in with that Passiflora, which was immediately answered by a Bomb Heaver. No Bomb Heaver in the hand of Nick R at this point. So we're going to have to see if he can mulligan towards that, because you know, oh, there's no Passiflora in the hand either. So Demarcation doesn't have the Passiflora, Nick R doesn't have the answer for it. So this might be a completely different perspective or a different dynamic to this first round.
I thought that was going to be like a caster curse right there, where you said he doesn't have Passiflora, and then the last mulligan occurs.
And he drops it.
And of course, yeah. Passiflora comes in. Just yeah, in every possible moment. Quick Dim and Corsair just to set up the threat of bleeding. Never. Yeah, I don't believe Nick's ever prioritized getting that Zeal effectively on deploy, because it does still represent the same level of threat. This is the first Spender and Profiteer. Street Urchins come down to start this remake. We are still in game 2 here, as we just had a pretty exciting tie. Anchorate Longship coming up to defend the melee row here, and as well create a number of instances of damage, which Nick's deck is completely themed around. All great swords. We didn't end up seeing the defender get played on Nick's side in the last game, as our first taste of poison comes down.
That's right. I believe it was the Grimace that was played to purify the Defender, which came out from the Royal Decree at the time, meaning that Defender was really the only card, the only big card left in the deck for Nick. So he managed to cycle through a lot of his main weapons there. As more bleeding is being spread out, the boat has caught a case of a bad cold there, and apparently ships and inanimate objects are susceptible to poison, but the Defender's going to come in there and protect it from the follow-up. And in this case, you're looking pretty good for Nick. You know, you have a Defender up, you've got some engine pieces there to commit to some damage, and the bronze package is looking okay as well, so you can actually be apply some decent pressure here without committing some big pieces. But that's a lot of bronzes, meaning that, you know, you might not have the big pieces you want, but at least they're going to be coming in some better draws a little later.
Yeah, I really like the inclusion of Defender, as well as the time that Nick chose to play it in a heavy poison meta, of which I would say this tournament is, considering the prevalence of Nilfgaard and Syndicate. Well, Syndicate wasn't so prevalent, but there is, of course, Squirtle here as well. But being able to drop the Defender and essentially block the poison requires perhaps another 2-for-1 to take out the Defender, because they're so strong. They're all like they all at least have 9 points on them to dig through, and then of course the fact that they're slowing everything else down for you is really difficult. So a bounty being applied here with that awesome new bounty effect as the dagger goes into the board, into the contract, which will allow potentially. Now Graydon was a mulligan here. The bank is still available.
This might be a little bit of a bluff. We've seen bluffs before, right? With the poison that led into this might be him just saying, all right, well, if necessary, I have the option to just kill that, gain a bunch of coins, and get on top here. And, the bleed's being applied to the Flying Redanian. The Flying Redanian was another card that comes out of the deck when you have a full pocket, so the 9 coins were achieved. The Flying Redanian comes out of the deck, and the booster, the stratagem, has been used on the Corsair, and that's it. I mean,
once again, last save for Skellige looks good. Nick was able to. Well, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same situation. It's going to be a lot of playing around the big pieces that Nick is clearly focusing on. But because there's so much focus, the Giga Scorpion, the weather in Avalok and Skellige Storm, and the multiple instances of damage that are available through the bleeds, it's really hard to stop what just keeps coming at you. It's a war of attrition of statuses. In the quick pass, we're going to see once again the long round, the desire to get Wild Boar of the Sea out, or perhaps. I think in the graveyard, the best thing available is only the Defender, or perhaps another Greatsword. We're going to check the graveyard in just a second, because now we are quickly into round 3 again here in match 2. Yeah, it is Defender. It is just the Covenant, so whatever comes out that needs to be protected, after Nick has seen the poisons he needs to see, that Defender is likely going to protect a gigantic dagger or Greatsword.
As are in hand as well to protect against the or to protect the Passiflora, at least getting a few chops at it. But there is the Grimace in the back row to purify one of the Defenders, so it's going to be a decision for Demarcation. Does he want to spend some of the coins perhaps to double up on those Defenders and pay the profit, pay the tribute rather? Passiflora is the scenario that Demarcation is going to rely on to really get a lot of his points going and maybe counteract some of that bleed damage, those damage over time that Skellige loves to just harvest and really make waves with in terms of the Greatsword and Dagger. Now it's worth noting that the players didn't really commit a lot of big cards in the first round, so there's going to be some pretty big time tug of war here in terms of haymakers being thrown back and forth. Really, but bronze cards. I mean, the Defender was played by Nick to protect against a completion of poison, and Demarcation really didn't play a whole lot in that first round. So both players are really they're locked and loaded here. They're playing with full clips, and Nick has more bronzes in his hand, but those bronzes are key pieces as well for the most part. I don't know how I feel about double stunning blow. It might just kind of stall out the game a little bit, given the fact that demarcation is on the play here. So it might just be a matter of demarcation, playing card met by stunning blow, play card met by stunning blow, and then we can get things rolling.
Passiflora being played without the protection. Watch how quick this Royal Decree is. I believe this is, oh, you know what? I spoke too soon. He's just going to go ahead and remove. It's perhaps, maybe I called that one wrong. Bomb Heaver is available in the deck, but the Royal Decree is just a little bit too important to find big pieces like Morkvarg and like Wild Boar of the Wild Boar of the Sea is in hand, but Dagger particularly. So he's letting it proc here. He's letting all the blind eyes are going to come out, but Nick is pretty happy with his position. More units means more things to hit, more things to bleed, more value to get from Skellige Storm and ultimately from Wild Boar, and more value eventually with this last say. It could be very titanic. So Nick just showing that, I mean, I think his hand was probably just a little bit too low to the ground to commit Decree to the Heaver. When you're holding Savage Bear and double stunning blow, it's better off to just combat those scenario points with the removal pieces you have. Stunning blow does trade with 1/3 of the scenario, you could say, so it is still working in Nick's favor as the fog comes down in the back row.
There's much better targets for the for the Royal Decree. I think over time, you're not necessarily too concerned about cards getting taller. In fact, it's going to work in your favor if you want to grab that Morkvarg to complete, a bigger play. So cards getting taller is not a huge deal. You don't want to necessarily give your opponent an option to go ahead and gain the 6 coins off of the completion of Passiflora. And Sol in the back row, that's not really going to last long. I feel like that's definitely a Scorpion decoction, or really any other option to kill that. That thing is going to need to die, as it's immediately answered, as we said, by Scorpion decoction.
Yep, it's a quick Scorpion here. Demarcation, playing the game of make him have it, make him have the answer, opting to just use his pieces of removal to kill these things off. And, the option is still available. It looks like Azar, oh no, this is Adriano's tribute option here. I think he's just going to go ahead. He will have a lot of extra money, so he might as well with the final proc of the Passiflora. So the Seductress comes out, which she'll immediately be put in harm's way here as statuses are applied to Adriano and the Peaches. Lots of instances of damage. Greatsword still available, and I believe in the graveyard we know it is Defender being the best pick. Could be what is ultimately able to support the Greatsword, but without a row to commit to yet, I think although the front row is looking pretty good, but without a row to completely commit to yet, that Greatsword isn't going to be protected yet.
Definitely, and that's part of the strategy with Skellige is you're able to commit those pieces early because you can get them back, and being able to use that second win ability in conjunction with something like Dagger or the opposite, vice versa, that is a big play as well. But since nobody really committed big pieces, second win really is not going to have a whole lot of immediate, combo power. It's going to be something to support, something to protect, and frankly, the only thing that's worth getting there, assuming nothing else dies off the board for Nick R, is really that Defender. However, that can instantly be, counteracted by the Hammond in hand. And I think Demarcation is well aware of the fact that in the graveyard, the best option is Defender. So hanging on to the Hammond to move the Defender and then get access to those big cards like the Greatsword or the Dagger is a whole different story. But first things first, you got to actually get those points going. You got to get the, we're a little bit far away from that. We're still a little ways away, a few turns away from seeing that happen. And let's see how it goes, though. But committing a Grimace tier is not the biggest deal. I know it's a pain in the butt, but that right there is actually a potentially somewhat okay target, perhaps, to steal with Philippa. But, to purify the Defender that you might see, to purify some of the bleed that you've got going, it's an option.
I mean, that is a pretty good Philippa target. I would agree with you. Being played without protection when there is an opportunity to be poisoned or bountied. But the big poison and the big bounty, whatever the big status may be, wildcard is going to be the way to apply that. So the answers for that would be a little bit difficult as it all happens at once. and it likely could just be this is the sequencing that the Wild Boar of the Sea is just going to be able to crush the board. And this is the Philippa play. Going to be spending 6 coins to entice Grimace to come on over.
Got him. All right, so a little got him on the Grimace there in the back row. A nice little target or a nice little option there to get an extra purification. The purification, of course, can get rid of some of the bleeding. All the bleeding's been done, however, but at the same time, you can go ahead and purify the defender. Again, Nick R. You know, sometimes a lot of factions feel good about only using bronzes to win round 1. But in Nick's case, it kind of is counteracting some of that initial burst strategy as a last say, because you don't have the damage dealer or the beneficiary of that damage. You don't have the greatsword / dagger in the graveyard. But here's an option. So this might feel a little bit like a trap, because if you kill the greatsword, it opens up the combo of leader ability into greatsword, royal decree, or wild boar into massive amounts of damage, right? So it's possible that you just, I don't want to say you just leave that there.
I don't think he's going to leave that there. I think Ewald is going to send him to the sewers. Ooh, calling the voice line, always a good feeling. Quick answer, Borsodi is not going to be, he does not deserve to live, to quote Philippa earlier. And quickly back to demarcation. Nick has his turns planned out. The decree is looking like it's going to be dagger. It's going to be Skellige Storm to make sure that the board is nice and wounded for a dagger Wild Boar of the Sea potential combo, and dagger will be protected by the Covenant of Steel defender from second wind. So it's all planned out. It's going to be exactly how Nick's going to draw it up that way, I'm pretty sure. Demarcation has to fight against that, but he has to keep putting units on the board, which represent more instances of damage, which represents a bigger and worse and mightier dagger.
Well, one thing to consider here is, yeah, you could Skellige Storm and then Royal Decree your dagger into a defender. However, again, Hammond is still in there as an option to move the defender away. But again, I guess you could follow it up. The problem here is that the second that you leave a big target like dagger open, like one of those engine pieces, one of those damage beneficiaries on the board, it leaves it open to just the kill with Graydon. But again, if dagger dies, you can still resurrect it. So maybe this is a situation where Nick wants to be a little ahead of schedule and drop those cards in and leave him open to a potential death so that he can resurrect the big card and combo it off with Wild Boar.
But if he makes that decision, if he were to play Royal Decree into dagger and then save his leader ability, that could cost him. He actually opts to put the Skellige Storm on the front row, where he actually ends up with less damaged units than he would if he put it on the back row. I believe because of the shield, because of the boosts on Peaches, and the fact that the Scarab itself isn't going to live. But it does destroy the defender, of course.
That's right, and then that means that perhaps, so again, if the Greatsword is what the target out of the graveyard, last play is Greatsword into Royal Decree Morkvarg on the front row. That's a good feeling though, seeing the Hammond come out. But Graydon has always been the last play, and I think he knows it. So now we're wondering, what is his play? Does he want to? You could still kind of feel good about perhaps dropping. I mean, do you? Oh my goodness, there's so many different.
It's a math equation right now. You're just looking at, does Covenant of Steel plus dagger plus Wild War of the Sea do it? Because Graydon, unfortunately, is going to get the full. He would hit the Covenant of Steel, which would give the 14 point swing plus the 3 from Graydon, of course, with the tribute. And Demarcation is ahead by a lot of points, as you can see. Right. We know Wild Boar of the Sea and dagger represent an incredible swing, but it is like in the 30s, and right now Nick is almost losing by almost 40.
Hear me out on this. What if you use your Royal Decree for Morkvarg? I was gonna say, that's an interesting one.
And he's gonna hold on to second wind here. He is valuing everything on the last say here, making sure that Graydon is just a little bit worse. And there is no bounty available. So of course, this is going to be the leader ability.
But I'm curious, because where are you getting your points now? Because Dagger is Dagger in the graveyard, or is he still in the deck? I know that there's a great sword in the graveyard.
You know, if I missed it, and Dagger's been in the graveyard this whole
Oh, he's
time.
in the deck, yeah.
Yeah, he's in there.
So unfortunately, the Wild Boar of the Sea, in conjunction with the Great Sword, is only really going to get you
So much damage
the front
prevention.
row value. But the front row value, I feel like if you had gone by
Gonna grab the
playing
Great
Royal,
Sword.
yeah, it's not enough. I mean,
The deficit was
decent
just
amount,
too far. He went for the long round, and now the long round has betrayed Nick again. The draw occurred, and now Demarcation taking a second win in the finals, now putting him match point. Now Nick is going to have to get a win with his mobilization list, his tactical decision list, and his second win list in a row, or Demarcation will be able to take it with Uprising, which is an excellent. Uprising was the first win. It would be the Mystic Echo list, which still works, is an excellent list. Now, with Wildcard getting through, Nick's favorite part about taking Demarcation as an opponent is that he felt like he had a good lineup against Syndicate. With Syndicate just broke through here, and Nick's got to fight Mystic Echo 3 times with, boosty lists are pretty tough for Wild Boar to get a lot of value from. There's a lot of armor out there, and of course, mobilization might be the only chance. Tactical decision does do well, of course, but it is going to be poison versus poison in a lot of cases. So Demarcation set up to win this tournament. Nick's got a long road ahead if he has a chance.
yeah, and I just want to go back to that previous last sequence of play. The potential line that could be taken there was you play Royal Decree to with 2 cards left. You play Royal Decree to pull out the Dagger. That was obviously going to be met with some hatred from obviously the Slander Graydon combo. No problem, but at least what that does is that opens up the option for you to go ahead and grab. Because let's be honest, Morkvarg. What did Morkvarg do? Morkvarg did 1 ping of damage in the back row. So it wasn't like a home run. But what you could do in that case is you can use your second win to bring out Dagger and then Wild Boar of the Sea, gaining the value on not just the swipes from the front row, but also the back row that hit twice again. So that was, I don't think it was going to be that close, but it was potentially going to be a lot closer than that line of play. But again, sometimes hindsight is 20/20, and in the heat of the moment, you don't know what your opponent has, you don't know what's going on, and there are various different avenues to take there. But at the end of the day, Demarcation had such a massive lead in controlling that round, so it didn't really factor in, I think. But different avenues to play. But I like what you're talking about in terms of Mystic Echo. It was allowed through, and when you're targeting one deck or one faction rather, to try to hone in your strategy, and that's what you want to capitalize on, is playing against that deck. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, and that weak link that supposedly Demarcation had against Nick's lineup is now gone. So what do you have left? Well, you're down 0-2, and you only have to play against Mystic Echo 3 times if you want to win, and that is an uphill freaking battle. So we're gonna see how this one sort of shakes out, but holy moly, I don't think that it gets any more difficult or have the odds sort of stacked against you. But these are really good players, so I think we're ready to rock and roll into that final match. As we see over here, there's that Mystic Echo, ladies and gentlemen. It's got blue coin. It's going to be playing against the tactical decision of Nick R. Demarcation on the bottom with the stratagem, the tactical advantage. The lamp, the magic lamp, and Nick R is on top there with the tactical decision double ball. So we'll see how this one shakes out. Again, Mystic Echo with the Waters of Broccolon is no joke, friends. It can really get out of hand real fast.
Now, boy, did you tell a story right there? The narrative about this entire matchup, the idea that we started off with, I believe it was 6 out of 8 Scoia'tael bans in the first day, to come down to Nick's last hope playing against Scoia'tael 3 times in a row, or Scoia'tael potentially getting the win for Demarcation, making him the champion of Gwent Open #1, and allowing him to play in Masters at the end of the season. As Pavko Gale comes down, remember, link your GOG.com account to Twitch. You can get yourself a Pavko Gale avatar, although there may not be time left, but you can still get lots of great drops if you're linked up.
And it just seems so unintuitive when you're just dropping these engine pieces against a faction that likes its locks and poisons. You're just putting a big card like Pavko Gale in the back row unprotected, because you have so many other places, other sources of damage or engine pieces, things like the Treant Boar, or the Waters of Broccolon dropping the 2 fledglings, and there's a piece of poison on a 6-point card. We like to see that. Pavko Gale, of course, on the back row. When he's in the range row, every turn you get a shot of 1 damage. However, if all your cards on the board are Scoia'tael, that damage is doubled to 2. So there's the first instance of Masquerade Ball spawning out the Thirsty Dame. Thirsty Dame's going to catch a little hate there from Pavko, followed up nicely by a Treant Boar, gaining Zeal because there is another Dryad on the board.
Absolutely. Now, not leading off with Waters of Broccolon, as sometimes Mystic Echo likes to do, because they do have access to that later, and it is a very strong way to gain control of the board early on. As the first ball is now completely on, the first Aristocrat has arrived, and the poison is flowing.
Who goes to these parties? Honestly, it's like, especially when it's a second ball scenario, when it's like, well, we saw what happened at the last ball. Like 6 people died, no one had fun, but hey, let's do it again.
Yeah, exactly. You'd think that. I think the government knows about it. I think that's the scariest part.
All right, so
the
as
scariest part indeed.
Here, a double poison comes in and takes care of the job, finishes the job rather, on the Mata in the back row over there in the range row. That's 6 points immediately nullified. And some of the strategy of not playing the Waters of Broccolon against the pressure of a Masquerade Ball that is playing on red coin is the fact that, it's not a big deal because you've got these big cards, these big engine pieces, such as Pavko Gale, such as the Treant Boar, and the removal options of the poison, so you can get away with it and then really capitalize late by doubling up on that Waters of Broccolon. Play Waters in the next turn, use it with Mystic Echo, and then capitalize on all the Harmony triggers right away. So here's the path.
There's that Scoia'tael confidence. That's a good deck. We got a lot of row. We got a lot of row stuff. We do have our best cards: Great Oak, Barnabas, Call of the Forest to help us out, and Waters of Broccolon potentially just being the protection needed in round 2. Saving Waters of Broccolon for round 2 could end up being the defense needed, as well as drawing some good control options. We got a decent amount of poison in the deck as well to use.
Oh, there's plenty of poison. The bronze package for this list, for this Mystic Echo list, is so compact. It's so concise. It's essentially 2 ofs of every important bronze card. So you're not going to really see. It feels like it's very specific here. You're basically picking the cards that will get you the best value, the best return on their investment. And there's the Sire. You know the story, how this one goes. You're going to go ahead and put the Masquerade Ball back in the deck to get things flowing. So things are looking pretty sweet. Things are looking pretty good. Everything's going to plan, I guess, for both players here. I mean, you feel kind of confident if you're in either position. If you are Nick, you're feeling good. Well, I played ball early. I got the round. I'm opening up for a long last round, and we're gonna, get the standard sequence here to go ahead and put the Masquerade Ball back in the deck. Of course, a Sire, when played on the range row, allows you to put a card from your graveyard back into your deck, and there's really one nasty target that everyone talks about here. As again, until you go past that 7-card threshold, you're still safe within retaining. Wow, I went through every iteration of re and ain put together, but retaining that card advantage. Regardless, and on the other side of the coin, Demarcation feels good because he hasn't even expended his Waters of Broccolon yet. So both players are probably operating with a little bit of confidence. But if you're Nick, you're like, you don't feel comfortable until you see that Waters of Broccolon in a round that is not, you don't want to see it twice in a round.
Oh, but he's going to, I think.
Most certainly.
I think we're all gonna take a dip today. It's a nice day out. Well, I mean, we're all around the world right now, so I'm sure that's true somewhere. And it's time to take a dip. We're gonna see double Waters, Figus in hand for the defense of anything that could be poisoned. Lots of control. There's the extra reliable poison from Isengrim, knowing that it's going to be grabbing, well, especially now that Fav is in hand, it's going to be grabbing a poison Dryad. What does this hand lack at this point? It has almost everything.
Weakness is what it lacks. That's definitely what it lacks at this point. Is just any type of weakness. So you know, the other thing is that you're tossing out Call of the Forest because you're gonna get it with Fob, right? Like everything just feels so good. Worth noting here, is that Melina in the list over there? That's a card that we like to see every now and then. Melina giving the option to just every turn moving a card back and forth, so that can have some implications for you know, for row locked cards to begin with, but also just for setting up you know, you can pair it up with Triumph War, but that's gone and done with now. But you know, just to sort of set up any other type of movement that's necessary to perhaps, for instance, play your Malayan on the melee row in order to deal the 4 damage, the targeted damage, and then move her to the back row to support a better Great Oak.
That is possible because you do have the row lock. I think it also has the application of creating a better situation for Teruvial if you have the ability to move all of the units into a single row as well. But I think the interesting part is, can these cow tossers, so cow carcasses do bypass any sort of defender mechanic. They just end up on the row next to whatever. So these cow carcasses will be able to get some value from their poison, I'm sure, because there's only so many things you can move around. But then again, you do have, well, now it all makes sense. Now, as I say it out loud, Melina can move the cows away.
Right? That's a pretty versatile tool, especially when you're just dropping cow carcasses and they're just immediately just brushed aside. And that's a nice little snipe. Look at that massive engine piece in the back. Everybody that comes to the party gets 4 pieces of applause by that like chorus of dryads in the back row as the first instance of poison is coming down. But I mean, it's one of those situations of like, the gods have blessed me with a spare, you know? So if one falls, there's 3 others to take her place.
Yeah, you have the option of simply playing Figus here to block further poison and force Figus to be the thing that is going to get poisoned. Or you just don't value it at all and you just kind of let the poisons play out on these units because you can rely so heavily on the strength of your other cards. So you could set up another Harmony engine here with the Hawk before playing Figus. You want to get as much Harmony out of your hand as possible. So it's also possible that a Dryad Ranger comes out from Isengrim's Council if that's the pick. I think there might be Forest Whisper on the pull as well, as the Great Oak quickly comes down to stop this engine on early appearance from the Treant.
I think that's an okay play. I think that you're so well ahead, and getting rid of something that could potentially just, you know, steamroll into further points is not a problem. Now, here's that Melina play that we're talking about. It's definitely possible that we can just drop Melina down and then move the cow carcass away from those intended targets, being the 2 dryads, one of which has already succumbed to a first round of poison. So that is definitely an option. You could just go ahead and, again, play her in the front row, move the cow to that row. And again, now what happens if there's another cow carcass that shows up? Well, you just move that one, you know, up or down or back or forth. It's totally possible, because this is another scenario. If another cow carcass shows up, you can't really move it to the front row because it's going to kill the Malayan. But I mean, that's the better option in this case. So a lock on the Malayan, completing the poison on that fledgling in the back row. It's a nice little sequence of plays, shuts down the movement mechanic, also takes care of one of the engine pieces and gets some of those points back. But yeah, I mean, the power of this hand, Demarcation has just bomb after bomb after bomb.
He just got the Harmony engine on the Dryad Ranger as opposed to getting the Forest Whisperer, which is also in deck. So getting a little bit of extra Harmony on the board when Dwarves and Beasts still haven't yet to be played, or Gnomes, is pretty awesome. And here comes that second cow carcass. What I really like here, I mean, boy, massive deficit at points just a couple of turns ago. Nick slowly coming back as the poison is allowed to proc. The lock on Melina means that these cows are going to be delivering the poison to these Dryads. I mean, you could still put the defender down, but there's the Purify available. Nick does have a lot of ways.
That's a fine defender. I like that move, actually.
Because, of course, you purify the defender, you purify the poison.
Or you could play Vincent to just crush the defender anyways, but that also negates the poison effect. So you're kind of saying it basically doubles up on the status effect. Now, worth noting as well, you can see Nick R is kind of setting up a back row, because I feel like he might want to yoink that oak and then use it with his tactical decision later on. So setting up an oak of his own, you can kind of see that one coming from a mile away, I think, if you're Demarcation, as he's just, there's no row punish really for Demarcation, so it's still safe to set up that row. There's no reason to necessarily.
Every now and then we get that gleaming green reminder that these Harmony engines are no joke. 6 on the board at this point with the Harmony Hawk. 5 on the board at this point with the Harmony Hawk. 1 is poisoned and no defense left. Here comes Morale, probably going to be giving a shoe here to the Dryad.
Dies too soon.
That Dryad knew too much, definitely.
But keep in mind, there is still a massive oak that can be played. The defender is gone. You still have some great plays for Demarcation. I mean, that gnome in itself is worth its weight in gold. Obviously, it's a lot of points here, as we can see. The Dwarven Skirmisher comes through, depositing 3 points of damage onto the Morale. If the Morale survives, it boosts by 1, so you got max value off that. The Cupbearer comes in, takes out another one of the fledglings. So 4 showed up, 1 survived. That does not sound like a good, that's not a good kill-death ratio to show up to a party, frankly, in my opinion.
It's not over yet. There may be no survivors. I think that Roderick still represents, and of course, between Roderick and potentially the Yennefer Steal and Play, which is available on the Oak, which is on the board. As well as a number of other high potential. But I mean, with the oak, you get everything. You get 7 points off the board, and you get an oak.
That's what I'm saying. And that oak's going to be delicious. Like, if you knew it. We saw it from a mile away that there was, stacking that row with no row punish in the deck for Demarcation, grabbing that oak, and look at that. I mean, it's like, all right, you had your turn, and mine's going to be better. So there's the option of course, as well, to you'll have it for sure with
There's
your
nothing good in there. Once again, Demarcation using tutors on a bunch of bronzes. That keeps on happening. He's drawing well sometimes. 51 to 28 is a hell of a deficit. Let's
Hold on now.
If it's going to be enough here, because there is the Oak, and Merktabrak is still in the deck for Roderick. A huge amount of points separate. Let's watch this resolve, my friends. It's going to be Merktabrak.
He knows that it's on top of the deck, meaning that he can use his Roderick to go ahead to get.
He's going to get the Joaquin.
Yeah, he's going to get the Joaquin to get the Oak. I'm telling you, man, this is just that. It's not over yet. This is a absolute sick sequence of plays. Again, keep in mind that Demarcation was up at one point by like 35 points. Is it enough? It feels like it is. That's a lot of points.
Wow. Yeah, that is.
Oh!
The 22-point Oak for the 2-point victory. Nick stays alive, making sure that we just see the tree in all its glory. No need to guess. That was 22 points. That was a 22-point tree. He gave 6 points to his opponent, ended up 2 points on top. Nick found the line. That was a good one. That one came down to the very last play. Awesome.
Well,
play.
it's also worth noting that that Oak was not the result of a bribery. So
yes,
that was a hard-working Oak. That was definitely a lot of work. Yeah, that was. So Nick getting one on the board there, using his tactical decision in a very clever way, stacking a row and seeing it a mile away that Oak was going to come back to rescue him. The damage was done early, but the Oak suddenly changing sides, deciding that perhaps the grass is greener on the other side, and saving the day for Nick. A 2-point victory in that case. It could have been hairy again, but he came through finally, and Demarcation still has the match point in his favor here. He still has another swipe with Mystic Echo, this time on red coin. And
oh boy, that's a tough one.
Yeah, Nick has the options now. What do I go for? He's got second win, or he's got mobilization. Dane, what are you feeling that you'd want to come back with here if you are Nick?
Northern Realms all the way, blue on blue. I think you want to take what could potentially be it could potentially be the hardest deck of yours to bleed against a deck that is reliant on engines that you can remove. However, I think that Skellige does have a shot, perhaps if this goes to game 5. We saw how big that board was from Demarcation, and we saw that there were a lot of units to hit. While most of them were boosted, and I think that might be the biggest issue, it does mean that there's still a lot of things to hit in a long game, and I think that's where Nick's been falling short with this second win. Not quite having the board he's looking for, Demarcation playing around all of the things he needs to get those instances of damage. But it could go either way. I do think mobilization is going to be the pick. So Nick might be taking that. And yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the best pick, as the players, I believe the invitations are going out very soon. So that was just, it's really great that we've seen 1-point victories, 2-point victories, and ties.
And it's not just that these 1-point victories were the fact that it was neck and neck the entire way, which is exciting in itself. These were massive comeback victories, or you know, ties that have come out of, I don't want to say come out of nowhere. You know, it's not Randy Orton delivering an RKO. It's frankly, they're just, these are massive points that they could just deposit and put on the board in short order. But some very close games. And what I like about these games and casting them is that it's not that the games are decided with like 5 cards left to go, right? Like, we're going down to the final plays, and it's still a mystery to us to see just how this shakes out. And that oak play at the end really was so masterfully done to make sure that the proper goals were played in the proper order to thin out that deck, get the exact sequence necessary to deliver that win. As we see right here and now, there is the Corsair coming down. We've seen this before, protected again by the tactical advantage.
Got a hearty hankering for Gwent.
So yeah, we're going through here again. That is we're having a little bit of technical difficulties here on this side, but we're doing okay, no problem. Don't worry about it. We're good to go. So the Demon Corsair, again protected by the tactical advantage, is met by a simple dwarf, a dwarven marauder. There, getting the vitality taken away swiftly by the Demon Corsair, which the bleed when applied to vitality is just a simple math equation. One minus the other and you're good to go. As we see, the ship in the back is protected by the Heimei Protector, meaning that any damage dealt by the boat is then recovered essentially by that Heimei Protector. A second Marauder comes through. All right, we're back in business.
Hello. I am A-okay, my friends, as this game is going to continue out here. Okay, so sorry about that. A little Discord technical difficulties. Dwarves upon dwarves here for Demarcation as he's going for the match point here. These first rounds for Nick in the Skellige, we've watched it go down constantly. He just is able to get into such a strong position and get these rounds and not finally seal the deal on the last say. So this will be the final chance here for Nick.
Row punish that's worth noting here again for Nick is the fact that there is a Skellige Storm that could punish those long rounds. You know, those rounds where you could just sense the oak waiting in the wings to come and swoop in and just, you know, exact its pure dominance, its greatness when that row is so long, you know, so wide. But in this case, that can easily be shut down by a Skellige Storm to punish that strategy. And, you know, back and forth, these are two factions, or these two deck lists, you know, Mystic Echo with the Waters of Broccolon and Second Wind with a Greatsword package that really wants to hammer down here and put some pressure in both rounds. The Wild Boar of the Sea, and we talked about this earlier, McBee, about committing these big pieces, is because, frankly, right, you want these in the graveyard.
Absolutely, yeah, you want to get this stuff in the graveyard. And here comes the pass. Once again, 3 times up, Nick with the last say. This time against the deck that a lot of players did not want to face. And like we said, Nick will have to face it at least 3 times in a row and pick up those wins. And it's been difficult so far with Skellige. Nick hasn't had a chance to do it, but here comes a nice hand. He has almost everything. The last game was difficult, right? He had Morkvarg and Dagger both in the deck with Royal Decree, and potentially Bomb Heaver also was still in the deck as well. So he couldn't commit Decree really for anything that had enough power to get that final win, that final few points for the win. But this looks a little bit better with the quick pass. We're going into round 3, and this could be the game for Demarcation or the comeback story for Nick.
Well, this is going to be, again, you know, two decks that really can thrive in long rounds. One of them, wants to just damage you and again, Pikachu, a little Pikachu damage over time, whereas the other is just going to continuously build upon its harmony to really make a mountain of points for you to deal with. But it's hard to call these because it's not like you're operating with a single Waters of Broccolon, you're operating with both. So that's more engines that perhaps Nick will be able to handle. However, from the previous matches, for his previous go with the Skellige list, he has a much better hand, much better tools at his disposal. And I think it's going to be a situation where he's probably going to be able to deal with a lot of these engine pieces real quick. For instance, Stunning Blow can answer one of these right now. You could drop the Avalok if you want to, but I don't think he's going to be too worried about dealing with these. As we see right now, the Avalok is going to start, just at the very least, damaging some of these units and putting them into a range where they're going to be susceptible to that boat or other damage effects.
Quick second Waters here, now committing to the full fortification, the Dryad Regiment behind Commander Figus Merluzzo. That is a lot to deal with. Quickly, Grimace dropping the Purify, and now it's all about Nick getting as much damage on this row as possible, and perhaps wiping out all of these engines, and making sure that this row is as punished as possible.
Grimace on the range row again can use that order ability to purify a unit on either side of the board, so it can be done as from a defensive perspective, or again in this case offensively, removing the defender tag from that Figus. So that row now that was protected so vigilantly by that brave dwarf, he has decided to step back and just let everyone fight the good fight. And in this case, there's the Tree Ant Boar. When it is played with a Dryad on the board, and there's a couple of them, it gains Zeal, and what happens is it just moves to the front row and offers 2 points of damage to whatever target it wants.
Now, I don't know if this makes a huge difference because there isn't Nature's Rebuke in there, but that armor tick right there actually prevented the Greatsword from hitting 6. I don't think it's going to be a huge thing, but there's no extra damage that brings it in reach necessarily.
But that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a little piece of RNG that could have come back to bite Nick, because if we could take a look, let me just take a look at the list here. If Demarcation actually is running a Nature's Rebuke, I don't believe he is. I think he's going pure units in this case. His Mystic Echo does not have a Nature's Rebuke, meaning that that Greatsword is relatively safe from a one-hit kill, but it could have been an option. Well, I say safe from a one-hit kill. I keep forgetting about that old Treebeard over there doing some damage, and that's not exactly a very aggressive response to a massive tree like that. Poor Bomb Heaver comes in and says, "Oh yeah," to that Great Oak, and not exactly as impressive.
Boy, Demarcation has a lot going for him right now. This could actually be like the last game where Wild Boar, as many points as it can be, may not be enough. Nick quickly playing here, trying to get to the end here, trying to get to the cards that matter the most. He's like, okay, Bomb Hero, okay, Hammond. I want to get to the good cards. Give me my chance to play Dagger. Give me my chance to get a really great Morkvarg target with a Greatsword on the board, hopefully. Second Wind is still available.
No poisons.
We're going to take a look at the graveyard as soon as we can, but the Second Wind is likely. We did see a little bit more good cards played, but it is going to have Wild Boar of the Sea and Greatswords at the very least. Wild Boar is the big get right here.
So no Skellige Storm, and when we're talking about row punish, that is probably one of the better ones, especially in conjunction with the Skellige strategy of damage. He's going to get a poison, but he has no follow-up on that poison. So this is purely just a matter of getting a card out there. I suppose another Harmony trigger as well, the 1 point of damage. And definitely. I mean, a little bit of a bluff, but I feel like if he did have a follow-up poison, he certainly would have used it to, perhaps end it with a bigger, if you had another Greatsword. I don't think you're in a rush to play that poison. I feel like playing that poison right here is merely a matter of getting another Harmony trigger on the board and maximizing the potential points, which is, the 2 from the boost of the Council, the 1 from the damage as well. So 6 points straight away, plus any Harmony effects later on. And looking at what we have on the board, well, you've got an opening for a Beast. You've got an opening for an elf, and you got an opening for a gnome. So you've got the harmony is not quite perfectly tuned up yet.
It's true. I mean, there's a lot of great reasons to go for that harmony piece, even without Grimace being on the board. The boar wasn't primed to kill Grimace there, so might as well just use it. These harmony engines are, we're going to see so many procs. Still, another engine needs to hit here. Cover, shield your eyes. That is a lot of boosty sparkling.
Yeah, no, that is a nasty effect, and it's great how it all happens in sequence. It's not all at once. It wants you to know just how much reach those cards get after a while. As we see here, there's Morkvarg just kind of shaving down the points off of that Dryad in the front row. Again, Morkvarg deals 1 point of damage repeatedly until that unit itself is damaged. So it keeps pinging by 1 until it is in the red. And in that case, from 8 all the way down to 2. But usually that Morkvarg, you want to pair it up with something that's going to take even further advantage of it, like a greatsword, like dagger. But it seems like Nick has just not been able to keep anything of value sticking to the board. All these complementary pieces, they're big in themselves, but that's where the beauty of this deck really lies, is in the fact that they complement each other so well to really snowball and exponentially earn value off of each of these cards that are played.
The Morkvarg play, I feel like there may have, certainly there was a better target for Morkvarg, but there's probably something I'm not thinking of. He's not in the interest of Nessus. He wants to bring things as close to wounded as possible. That means that the Dryad is the closest thing. Maybe I just don't see it here, but what I do see is a lot of units on the board, 8 in the back, 3 in the front, 2 more to be played, 13 in total. Many of them are, there's a stunning blow, so we'll say 12. We'll call it 12. That's at least 16 damage from the Wild Boar and 12 additional points from Dagger. So is that a 32-point swing? He's down by 45 at the moment. This is going to be a wild last say from Nick, and I don't think it's going to be enough.
It doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Crazier things have happened, but just from the points that are generated in hand, and keep in mind, that beast is not on the board yet. There's no Beasts of Burden on the board to otherwise Badger, good old Nick R, and he's going to show up and worth 5 plus just count the harmonies, man. It is just absurd at this point. That beast comes in and is just you're going to see again the light show occur as the beast comes in, deposits 2 points of damage. God knows where. I don't think it really matters at this point, but holy moly, there's the fireworks again. Every single one of those Dryad fledglings with a round of applause for that beast that shows up. And Berja in the back row there, Pavko Gale was moved by Melina before she bit it, and that's more damage. And here comes another swing of Elven Justice, Malayan with a melee row 4-point slap to the face for Hammond.
Every single card did so much work for Demarcation. Here comes the big explosion of points, but Skellige 3 times up with a last say that powerful isn't able to seal the deal. And Demarcation is your first winner of Season 2, Gwent Open #1, and he will be heading to the Masters at the end of the season.
Yeah, there he is. He's still modest to the end. No real celebration right now, as he's just kind of like, yeah, man, I'll beat up on Skellige 3 times tonight. My man, you have my respect, because it always feels better when you win against Skellige, at least in my books, because that's just for me. That's a personal vendetta. But it's all good. Congratulations again to Demarcation. And again, Dane, in this case, what happened, man? He just beat up literally on Skellige 3 times.
Yeah, Skellige was a big list. In some cases, I think we saw a Skellige ban, and that list going in with last say 3 times, I thought for sure he was going to catch a win with that, and I thought that Mobilization might have the good matchup. Syndicate seemed to be the weak link, and none of that went according to plan for Nick. So Demarcation was able to pick it up 3 versus 1. Nick did have a pretty solid win there at one point, but it ultimately wasn't going to be enough. Demarcation is going to Gwent Masters and is going to be it's a new champion here. We knew that from the very start of the day, and I'm interested to know what all of you thought, who all of you thought was going to make it in there. Again, hashtag Gwent Open. If you still want to connect with people around the world talking about Gwent Open, we're all connected from around the world. You can follow us again on Twitter at PlayGwent and at Gwent Masters.
All right, so I've got some questions for the winner. We want to see what's going on there, right? Demarcation, I believe, is ready to go for an interview, so let's go switch it up. And my man, Demarcation, how are you doing? You just won, and you did it in a fashion that I personally will thank you so much for. You beat up on Skellige 3 times. How does it feel to actually win in that way?
I mean, I think like decks were pretty favored against Gallagher, so like I'm not surprised that I can beat that deck. But I also tied once. But in this tournament, so I have tied 3 times, so it's not anything new to me. I just like focus on another game. I forgot what I tied. I think the Harmony versus SK matchup is really favored for me because I run Milena, so I was prepared for that matchup.
Yeah, the Milena there was really good in terms of moving cow carcasses to prevent poison triggers, as well as rescuing cards like Pavko Gale from their moves and just, reversing the damage that Hammond did. I want to ask you also, when the bans were announced and you were able to actually go into the finals with Mystic Echo, that's a deck and just frankly a faction in general that was targeted for bans so frequently in this tournament. How was it? Was it more confident for you? Did you feel like a sigh of relief that you got to go in with a deck like Mystic Echo?
Not really. Like I was actually expecting him to ban my NG because he also banned the NG in his first 2 series, so I was expecting that. And his decks were kind of good, but like not really counters Harmony. For example, his Poison NG is really good against Harmony, but I don't think his NR and SK has an edge against Harmony. So, but my NG is pretty favored against pretty much all his deck except the Poison deck. So I was kind of expecting the ban, but it wasn't like super surprising for me. But I think it actually went well for me because I think Harmony has a better chance to get out against his SK than probably my NG against his other decks. So, yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, the victory speaks for itself. You got to go through. Now you win GWENT Open 1 for Season 2. You're the first winner for this season, so congratulations again for you for that. You've got a ticket to GWENT Masters that's going to occur probably towards the end of the year in December. The big show, my man. You got the first one to go through. Now, the next question is, now that you've got your ticket punched to the big show all the way out in December, the major tournament at the end of the season, are you still going to be grinding some pro rank? Are you still going to be playing as much as you did? Now, I'm just taking a look at, you had 680 wins just this past season to qualify for this tournament. Are you going to kind of throttle back a bit? Are you going to relax, or are you going to still go for it and, stay sharp for the next following months all the way to that final tournament?
I think I will just chill for probably next month because for these 2 days I haven't had much time to focus on my studies and other stuff. I was just basically playing Quinn. So I think in the next month I'm gonna chill. But after that next month I'm gonna still play as much as I usually do, just to get the feel of the game. I don't want to be too overconfident in myself and then just not practice at all and then feel miserable in the end. So.
Awesome. Well, again, a student of the game and a student in real life. So I wish you well in your studies, my friend, and take a deep breath, man. Chill, relax, enjoy yourself. Again, congratulations, Demarcation, and we'll see you soon. So have a good night, relax, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
All right, so that again was Demarcation, again, winner of GWENT Open Season 1. Take a look at that money that he is walking away with, $5,700 and a couple change there. That's a decent meal and a half, if you ask me. Demarcation again topping the charts here in Season 2. 1. Dane, I mean, overall reaction to that series, but the tournament in general.
The series was really great. I think we saw a lot of really good play from both sides. The tie, of course, 3 ties in the entire tournament. We can go through, we can take a look at the bracket, the journey we've been on today. So yes, in Colomon's series and in Demarcation's, well, there were 3 ties, I believe. Yeah, we definitely cast 2 of them.
We cast 2 of them.
Yeah, we cast 2 of them, and there was one just on the way in from the semifinals. So lots of really close games, lots of 1-pointer, 2-pointers, a couple of really crucial mistakes, and some great punishes, I think, when the players were able to. The open deck list made it really interesting as well. I just think it's awesome altogether. And also, I think it's great that esports is supported by you, the community, Year of the Were-Rat bundle is going towards the Masters prize pool and is still available in the Gwent shop. You can get the sewer board, the card back, and the penitent sewer version, the sewer wraith, in the shop at this time. There it is. That is a 3D card back, by the way. The rats are scratching at the concrete. And yeah, it's a pretty cool set, and it goes towards Gwent Esports, and it is thriving. I think that the money that was raised for this open was fantastic. I believe that came from the Flaming Bundle, and it was just, the players are walking away with a pretty good slice of pie. A lot of players got a lot for coming in the door, and I think that the payoff is pretty good for most, and hopefully for everybody in the community. I had a great time with this tournament.
Yeah, this was a great experience all around, I think, for everybody. Again, given the fact that there were a little bit of, hiccups now and then, but again, this is the first time that we do it this way. This is not ideal, but it is the way it is. So the fact that you guys were patient with not just us, but with all the circumstances as well. Again, it's not part of the plan when I got to tell you about all the comic books on my wall. I get it. It's things happen, but you know what? Challenging circumstances, we had to adapt to them, as do you. And we do thank you again for being patient with us as we did work this out and eventually give you the showcase you needed, of which was the best Gwent players in the world, really hashing it out in this tournament. This top 8 was exceptional. There were some great matches, not just ties, but it was so razor close in a lot of those matches. And it really, at the end of the day, it shook out the way it did. Demarcation comes on top, and there is more Gwent to be played, not just in a new season, but new tournaments are happening fairly soon, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, Gwent Open 2 is like right around the corner.
June 27th and 28th. You can save the date. Gwent Open 2 has already got a number of participants all lined up, and it'll be very soon. It'll be on us before you know it. There's a countdown on the Playgon website. Demarcation is our final champion. It's been a great day of Gwent, a great weekend of Gwent, and a pleasure to do this remotely from around the world. Back to you. Thanks so much, Gwent Open. Thanks so much from Canada, Warsaw, and from the Champions House in the US, but of course hailing from China. Take care, everybody. This is Big Beard signing off.